Imagine Miles having some good moments right here.
I mean, these guys are both throwing some haymakers now. Good jab.
That's a good shot right there by Bud. Ooh, good shot.
He overextended himself, and Crawford made him pay with 30 seconds to go here in the 11th.
It was a left uppercut, clean left uppercut.
All three scores go to the winner by unanimous decision. From Omaha, Nebraska, USA, he is the new WBA Super Welterweight Champion of the World, Terrence Bud Crawford.
History is made as Crawford with the unanimous decision.
Getting out of boot camp and getting to football is probably exciting for them.
Dylan, he's done a great job. He's just one of the guys. He's just working to improve every day, holds himself to a high standard. Like what he says is really who he is. He loves it.
Nebraska's a special place, and it's always been like that. I never take it for granted how good our fans are. I try to be around my guys as much as possible, take them out to go eat, play Madden. So it's been good. I love living here. Not a lot of distractions and a lot of ball and being around your guys.
Live from 50th and Capitol Avenue in the Big O. This is Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and 1620 The Zone TV. Now here's Gary, Nick, and Jimmy.
I just got three things to say. God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your engine!
And a good Monday morning, everybody. We are either, however you look at it, whatever your mood is this morning, we are a day closer to football or we're a day closer to death.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Hey, just the reality of
Just
what
means I've been here too long.
What Monday is. Oh, Jimmy. No,
I'm happy
no,
this
no,
morning.
No. We're not doing this because it is the last day of us living on the sun.
Okay.
It's supposed to be like the Canadians are coming to bail us out with this weather.
Usually they hit us up with the smoke.
Yeah. So
it's going to be a gorgeous day today.
Like today's the last day of like oppressive heat.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of our brothers and sisters that still don't have power in this area, which is
not a nice day for them.
I got thoughts on that as someone that has had a lengthy stretch of a home that does not have power. I got thoughts on that. But I'm not going to let you say we're closer to death than we are to the start of the football season. That's just like saying, are the Chicago White Sox closer to 30 wins or 100 losses, which you can get as a prop bet.
That's a good prop bet, actually.
They've lost 20 in a row.
Yep, all right. For a record. Congratulations.
I have never been more excited on the 5th of August to watch a late night West Coast game than I am to watch the White Sox and the A's tonight, because I'd like to see the White Sox lose their 21st in a row, but I also want to see how many people are there. But that's
ooh, yeah. Ooh,
so
dozens.
There's a prop bet. So we're not going to talk about death, okay? We're just not.
I didn't mention.
We're going to talk about football because this was one hell of a weekend. This was a great sports weekend, and again. This is coming from somebody that got some thoughts on the old OPPD thing, and power being out.
As well you should.
And at times seeing more cyber trucks in my neighborhood than an actual power truck, or being able to go to the corner by my house and look across the street and there is a fleet of power vehicles sitting in the Baxter Arena parking lot, the staging area.
Having a party.
You like my hat, don't you?
I do, yeah. I keep reading it. I'm trying to make it all awesome.
Hey, nobody's going to rain on my parade today. I might have been stupid and agreed to play. I'm not going to say stupid because I know they're listening. To play in a golf event today at noon. Oh God!
I think I know which one. I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
You like these days, though. Not as humid today. Are you wearing that hat for it?
I may wear this hat. This hat is unbelievable. If people are watching on 1620 The Zone TV, it's fair. It's Fair and Fever 24. I'm ready for State Fair.
With an Iowa Cubs logo.
Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. Get yourself some. Okay, back to this weekend. So I could look across the street and see the fleet of vehicles.
The party.
Yeah, there are people that still do not have power. But I've learned a lot more about how this all works because I asked questions. But this was a great weekend. We have the world's fastest man, that you heard there in the highlight. Saturday was pretty much of a banger of a day. Nebraska had their open practice, which I think is a great thing. I think it will become a tradition. I think they will make this a thing on the first Saturday of camp, so everybody knows when it is. So you prepare for it instead of like a month out announcing, or it wasn't even a month, I don't even think, that they announced that they were having this. I know Rule said 3,500 tickets were sold. You and I were both there. I would say there was probably, I don't know, 4,000. There wasn't like 5,000 there.
Yeah.
But there were probably, I bet there was a little over 4,000 that were there. But I loved it. I think it's going to become a tradition. People will plan for it. They will have a better turnout because the people that were there, whether you or myself, who was very keenly watching football stuff, or you brought your son, I think it was a great event.
Yeah.
I think it really went well on Saturday, and I think it'll become a tradition, and I think they are open to more ideas to involve fans that also benefits 1890.
Well, and one of the things about Saturday, if you were waking up and you were looking at certain headlines around college football, that became a headline, what Nebraska, accompanied with Ohio State and other teams that are in a power position of whether national championship contention, looking to build their program, are considered to be, are basically held in high regard, that Nebraska was amongst them of the few that are doing this, where you have the NIL era that will now grant your fan base access if you're willing to pay. So I thought that was actually kind of a cool little teaser into the evening of, oh yeah, Nebraska amongst 4 or 5 other schools that are doing this, that they mentioned in, I think ESPN.com had it up there. I've never gone back when Chicago had their training camp in Bourbonnais. I always wanted to go because I heard Bourbonnais is,
a fun name to say.
A fun name to say, but also
Bourbonnais.
It has nothing to do with bourbon. It's essentially what I would assume the St. Joe experience is, where it's a very unassuming area. And when camp takes over, it's all about the camp scene. It's all about people flocking to that. And that's what they're there for. Now, Kansas City is one of 3 that still is in a different location. Most of them are now, everybody's at their normal practice facilities.
Well, you got 5 that are in California now.
Yeah. Yes. And so I never got a chance to go there and watch a Bears training camp. I always wanted to, and even when I was younger. This would be what I would assume would be very similar to if you go to a pro training camp as a fan. You get to go out there and you hope to maybe even get some autographs. You're going to see some things. You're going to see some team compete. You're going to see some actual, individuals. So whatever you want to actually take away from it. And then if you, like me, and you have a kid there too, if you maybe want to get the occasional autograph, at some point there's going to be that opportunity. And I was telling you before it came on, I shouldn't be surprised now, but having the MC and having the coaches mic'd up, they played to, if you paid the $25, and which also I heard that they opened it back up on Saturday. So it was supposed to be shut down on Friday, and then they opened it back up
on Friday. They were underwhelmed by the ticket sales, but I think they learned a lot of lessons. Again, this is going to become a thing, and they'd shut off the ticket sales because they had to do some logistics of staffing, and then they thought, what happens with the spring game is a lot of people are last second that are like, oh, okay, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And so they show up on Saturday morning to buy a ticket to the spring game. I think they were kind of hoping for that. Yeah, they did learn a lot about this, but I loved it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's going to continue. I think it's the right time of the year because any later Nebraska's into prep for opponents. And so you don't want to, I don't want to say throw away a practice day,
right?
But you don't want to throw away install all of that kind of stuff. And so that was a good practice to show off to fans because they gave you a little bit, but they didn't open up the curtain.
Yeah.
I did like that Rule was mic'd.
Glenn Thomas was mic'd.
You heard coaches got after it.
Yep.
But they're open to things like that. And I think you're going to see it continue. I love the idea. It also showed me, because we're going to talk about, there is the overreaction. There are some things of, oh, okay, I see you. I'll pay attention for, couple of more weeks. There are some concerns on this football team, but one of my bigger takeaways walking away is we are going to have to adjust around here how we look at a quarterback, and also at some point sooner than later, people around here that have endured a lot of bad football. I mean, I feel like the one of the racers in the 100 that was like a half of a second away from winning.
Get your chest out.
I feel like Nebraska. You're going to have to embrace good. You're going to have to at some point embrace being good and not fight it, because there's some. I said this last week. They have something. There's a ways to go, but they at least have something. But not only embrace being good, but we all around here, because haven't seen it in a long time, are going to have to embrace what having a real deal quarterback looks like.
It's kind of it shouldn't be a scary proposition, because there's been enough things in the past, whether it's been hype, hope, what your heart wants it to happen, and you can gravitate to certain areas of the football team and look at this guy and think, hey, okay, this makes sense. If this guy can be good, then things can sort of fall into place. And I think there was a sense of that with Adrian when you saw his true freshman year of, well, you get several more years of this guy. He's a playmaker, and you were hoping that along with his growth, the team growth would go there with it. And as we know, that wasn't necessarily the case. And watching him now, I've literally had 2 times to watch him now, and that was in the spring game and now in practice on Saturday. It's almost elementary at times for him, watching him throw the football, where I even noticed this in the spring game too, but it's almost like, is the dude going 100? Like, is he going full speed? But he is. It's just, he makes a lot of little things look easy. There were the risk factors, and I listened to him talk on Friday. They were asking about, what are you doing as far as the turnover part of it, which is a big part of this season. And you think of it, and the reason I say that that's kind of a scary proposition of what you just laid out there is a big elevated area to this team is going to be the quarterback position. And yet, when you listen to the turnover question proposed to a freshman quarterback that is going to be tasked with being a big part of that, his response, I think, was one that out of anything that I heard on Friday was my biggest takeaway. And he talked about the instinct when it comes to trying to walk in that tightrope of knowing you have the arm talent, but also knowing when to use that arm talent in a beneficial manner, as opposed to not trying to play hero ball or fit something into a tight window. And I think his answer made perfectly good sense. And it also gives you an idea of maybe where you've seen it lag in previous quarterbacks that have played, and that is just having that instinct. And this is where we talk about the type of kid that he's grown up to be. But when you watch the way he throws the ball, when you watch the way he operates, when you watch him in the team portion, where there were probably throws that if your eyes are huge and you are overly confident with your arm, you're going to still try to fit it into a window. He didn't really do that.
No, there was probably one ball, I think it was to Banks, that he underthrew. So this is kind of how I watched, and we're going to talk a lot about just some observations of Saturday night that Nick and I have. I really wanted to watch and see if I could tell which guys were true freshmen.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Like, there are some guys. I mean, some defensive backs got picked on. Nebraska got some big-bodied wide receivers, man. Mm-hmm. There are some guys that they have been attached to the hip of Corey Campbell. But he's a guy that doesn't look like he looks very mature. He's the best pure passer at Nebraska since
Zach Taylor.
I mean, I got to go back about almost 20 years, possibly.
Yeah.
He has the thing. So as I watched him, and they put him in a lot of interesting situations in front of the public. I'm sure Run the Ball guy had a heart attack in the stands when they threw a fade from the 5-yard line.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Hey, there's another thing. They're going to throw the football.
Yeah.
I mean, we love Run the Ball guy. Nebraska going to throw a football. But they threw a fade from the 5-yard line. And I don't know if, if they had to bring a couple of people down on stretchers because they had heart attacks. They'd never seen that before.
That usually does get the F-bombs going for me when someone does it at the 1.
But he has this thing like, and the thing that you have somebody that is as talented, can be as talented as Raiola, and then you have the other quarterbacks that are out there with him. There's a distinct difference. Mm-hmm. And in one particular area is he has a really good clock in his head. So he climbs the pocket very well, and he doesn't get really nervous where all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, they're closing in. I got to get rid of football. He doesn't do that. He has such a nice little poise and a feel and a touch on passes, whether they be deep balls, because you're gonna love himself some Banks and Naor and some Bonner, or just short passes. He has such a really good touch, but he has a good clock in his head where he climbs the pocket and he doesn't get skittish. Like Harburg still has that. Mm-hmm. Like Harburg's come a ways, but Harburg still has, I'm going to pull it down and take off.
Right. That's his instinct.
Raiola can run when he needs to. They're not going to run the option with him.
Right.
But when he needs to run, he's okay. I mean, I'm not asking for him to be, Bolt or Lyles. Okay. But when you need to run and scramble, you're running forward, not sideways. Mm-hmm. And I think he can do that. He just, every time you see him, he's different.
Yeah.
And we're not used to that around here. And that's going to affect a lot of things. Now, I've kind of changed. If you're going, okay, the ceiling and the floor is the quarterback, probably need to look at left tackle.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's definitely the ceiling or the floor, but the left tackle position is kind of interesting. And especially after what we saw on Saturday night where, Turner Corcoran's had a good camp. Now he did limp off at the end of practice. Yeah. I don't think it's anything serious, but Turner Corcoran's had a good camp, but he's one of those guys that fits into like Gabe Irvin, who looked good and looks like the August, September Gabe Irvin physically of, oh yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Corcoran's had a good camp. And the fact that he was running with the ones at left tackle, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Was it kind of a new development?
One of the first things that I was looking at the offensive line is like, wait, that's not Teddy. That's Turner Corcoran right there. And that's a fair point though, about there are guys that maybe they have made that jump. And I hope that if we're just talking about the offensive line, I hope that maybe there could be that Bryce Benhart example from a year ago where Bryce Benhart was another guy that I think was always in the crosshairs of the criticism of the offensive line of, this guy is a swinging gate. Why can't they find something better? Okay, we get it. He's a huge dude, but you got to get more out of him. Well, they finally did, and finally hit that peak. Turner Corcoran's played a lot of football. And that was the thought was, okay, maybe his more natural position is going to be on the interior. And with a very healthy Teddy Prohaska now, that would allow him to do that. And yet you're still seeing Turner Corcoran getting a lot of the reps with the ones, which was very interesting. I think that going back to the quarterback part of this conversation as well, though, is it's hard to take that big leap on how that play is going to be elevated when you've been burned in the past. But I think that was the good thing about the people that had a chance to see him on Saturday and have had a chance to see him in the spring game too. And so you've watched an early part of his development as a college quarterback, or at least with Nebraska and getting in tune to the offense from the spring, and then having a chance to have a lot of time in between to see on Saturday how comfortable he looks. Because I would agree as far as the way he climbs, that stands out. Eyes are always downfield as well. There's just, there's a calmness to him. And again, I go back to that connection that he has with his uncle and being able to read offensive line protection, being able to understand what they're going to do and how to kind of work in sync there too. And I just, this is where I go back to not overthinking though what Dylan Raiola is. He's just a talented kid. And I think those instincts,
that's what I describe it.
They're just there. I don't know if that's why I go back to when he said, when he was asked on Friday about the tight roping of trying to force something into making a good decision. And he talked about instincts, which, okay, maybe to some people sounds like a cliched answer, but what that is I don't really know how to explain it, Gary. It's just there for me. If you're talking about that, I can't really tell you what I'm thinking in the moment. I just kind of read and react. And that's what my development over a decade has led me to believe. That's what my conversations with my uncle and studying that element of being able to climb a pocket, knowing where protection is going to be, and also having confidence in my receivers. So I can't tell you exactly what is happening from point A to point Z on that. What I can tell you is it's just natural to me. And so I don't know if people necessarily want to hear that and be like, boy, I'm supposed to give a freshman the benefit of the doubt, but you hear it, then you watch it. And that was the best thing on Friday. You heard from the quarterbacks, you heard from Dylan Raiola, and then you watched it with your own eyes, and it all aligns. It all makes sense.
So if you were there and you just focus on him, it's not his team, but he's a big part of that team. Whether it be hanging out with the defensive guys, stuff he says to older guys. I said earlier in the week, last week, that Jamal Banks saying how he treats us. I was like, whoa. When Glenn Thomas on Friday, and that happened after we were off the air, he talked about his voice. He talked about his voice in the huddle. When you're a young kid and you come in, you got a lot of veterans because that's a veteran offense. There aren't a lot of fellow true freshmen that are in the number one offense huddle with you, but your voice is strong and your voice resonates. That's subtly another thing to go, okay. And why I continue to say it's time to embrace that Nebraska, for the longest time, has finally gotten the guy at quarterback that is a quarterback. But when Glenn Thomas says his voice in the huddle, that's a very subtle thing. He is QB1. He acts like it. He performs like it. He talks like it. But he's very humble. You can tell that he's been brought up well. Yeah. In person, when you watch him, his mannerisms tell you that he's a leader and that he loves ball and that he just wants to be one of the guys. He doesn't want to be treated special. He kind of deflects a lot of things. But, man, just seeing him live, if he can make the next step and then the next step, because he's still got some room to grow. But the other thing is, man, his touch on his balls is, we haven't seen that.
Yeah.
We've seen quarterbacks that come in here and we say, what are your balls like? And they're like, a little inconsistent. Okay. It's not a catchable ball. Raiola's got a nice little touch on his balls.
That's what I mean.
That goes a long way, especially if you're a wide receiver.
Right.
And Nebraska has, as you saw this, Nick, and then they ran through them all. Nebraska has quite the variety of wide receivers, like in terms of size, speed, what they can do well. But just the little fact of hitting guys in stride will go a long way to moving this offense forward.
Yeah, and when you mention the touch that he has, that's where I go back with when he flicks it, it almost looks like haphazard. Like it's hard to describe because even on like fade routes where he's going to put a little bit underneath it, it comes out, the trajectory's good, but it's just so, again, I'll use the word elementary. It kept looking.
Well, you know what we're describing here is that's what quarterback play is supposed to be like.
Right. And that's probably why it's like, whoa,
we've had so many athletes playing quarterback here.
Yeah.
And we've had poor quarterback coaching. And now Nebraska has finally aligned things where they got a real quarterback that plays quarterback and they got a quarterback coach that develops quarterbacks. Okay?
Yep.
That's why it's time to embrace that this is different, because it is. All you have to do is put your eyeballs on it. Now, there were other observations, and there were a couple of things that are of major concern. I mean, major concern for this program moving forward. Not this program, but this particular elements of this team that we will discuss as we roll through the show. Let me give you the lineup. It is brought to you by the referees at John Higgins Weather Guard. Coming up at 8 o'clock, isn't the timing great? Tyler King will join us to talk about Colorado. Colorado was in the news yesterday. Who would have thought that Colorado could start 3-0 and then finish 1-8, and it would be all rainbows and butterflies? But I'm sure Dion will have a comment today as Athlon Sports put out the fantasy land that is Colorado football. Quite the article. So Tyler King will join us coming up at 8. Evan Bland at 8:30. He was there on Saturday night. I'm sure he's got an observation or two maybe a discussion on heat is just a mind thing. I'm wearing long sleeves today. It's going to be 99.
You're going to be wearing that for golf today?
Coaches were wearing long sleeves. It's a mind thing. If you think you're hot, you're hot. If you don't think you're hot, then you strike out when you go out on Friday nights, okay?
It's just ridiculous.
Hey, it's a thing. I wonder, is Donovan Raiola a sweater? Is he a sweater? It doesn't appear he's a sweater. Always in long sleeves.
So it's a mental thing for him, too?
Yes. Jacob Bigelow stops by at 9. What a great weekend of sports. For the USA, it was a banger of a weekend. People got to see a little tease of Nebraska football, a couple of Saturdays away from the start of the season. And from Omaha, Nebraska, USA, Bud Crawford wins. Did you guys pay for it, or did you illegally stream it? Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
You can come clean here.
I was amazed how many options you had to watch the stream of somebody else streaming it. So basically, yes, it was an illegal stream.
Okay, that's fine. TikTok was your friend. I tell everybody that. Because we have a lot of cheap people out there that won't pay the money. And
I paid for the last one. I paid for the Errol Spence one last year.
If you would have paid for this one, would have been better to turn the sound down. Boy, there was a lot of meat glazing going on. But TikTok is your friend. TikTok had so many free streams. It's okay to say that you streamed it illegal.
Did you say meat glazing?
Yeah. Are you not familiar with that term?
No.
During the break, look it up.
Okay.
But it's got to be the urban.
I think I have an idea of what it is.
There was meat gazing in high school in the shower, but that was a different conversation.
Well, okay.
Thought you would have at least heard of one of those.
Jesus.
Not glazing.
My 7 o'clock a Jerry Sandusky reference. Come on, Jimmy. Yeah. Meat glazing. Look it up on Urban Dictionary.
You're 18, not 8.
This was not going to be Crawford Spence 2.0. But Bud controlled this fight against a fighter whose style can be very difficult. A win at 154, looked like a guy that had a year off, that his power probably wasn't up to the 154-pound class. I know there's a big desire now for the fight, and there's a lot of money. Legacy. They have weight classes for a reason. But we'll talk about what Bud did on Saturday night, because if there's one unifying thing, even if you have power or don't have power, Bud Crawford is the guy that brings all of Omaha together.
Does.
North, south, east, west. Look at, if you've ever gone to a Bud Crawford fight when we've been lucky enough for him to fight right here in his hometown, look at the cross section of people that go to watch. But even at midnight when they finally started, after they had done some meat glazing of the Saudis, look at everybody. It seemed like was watching. Legal or illegal? Are you looking it up?
I am.
Yeah. You might see a picture of Sean Porter.
Oh, okay. That's not what it is. I need the Urban Dictionary one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, they ain't going to give you anything.
AI was not giving me the Urban Dictionary on that one.
No.
Yep.
Also, we will discuss some things going on in college football.
That's what I thought it was. Okay. Well, good, very well use of that one.
Michigan has some splaining to do, but when Michigan is more powerful than the NCAA, what will happen? As we expect some things to come out today. Plus more on the Olympics over the weekend. Take a bow. No allows. Man, that guy can talk as much trash as he wants. How cool is that to be able to tell people you are the fastest man in the world?
Yep. You're like a superhero.
What do you do for a living? I'm the fastest man in the world.
Yeah. And I get compensated as such.
Yesterday was a great day at the Olympics because you had golf. You had golf and tennis.
Yeah.
And then you had the 100. And the fact that with 30 meters to go, he was in last. He passed 7 of the fastest men in the world in the last 60 meters. I mean, hello. He was at one point. The call was botched. Okay.
Yeah, because they thought Jamaica. They thought Jamaica won.
Bring back Tom Hammond. The guy should not do. I mean, you just say photo finish.
Yeah.
Why do you say Jamaica's got it?
Yeah.
Noah Lyles was running 27 miles an hour.
Yes.
miles an
I believe
hour.
it was 27.2 to be precise.
It
Like some of the people driving on Dodge, 27 or 87. There's no in between.
But as impressive as that was, and it was an incredible race with an incredible finish, you have to pause and go, damn, Usain Bolt was a speedster.
Yeah.
I mean, Usain Bolt's 100 record time may not be touched.
Mm-hmm.
But what a day. What a weekend for the USA over in Paris.
And
except for our friend Dylan Travis and the 3x3.
The gold, not the medal count. I think you're getting close to your number. We're getting up there.
123. I went over.
Yep, we're getting there. But now the gold is starting to catch up to the medal count as well. We're starting to be able to show that we've got, yes, the most in the medal count, but also the golds are not lagging behind too far. After was like Wednesday, I think that was a little bit off kilter. Now it's starting to kind of even itself out. So strong showing yesterday. Strong showing from me and Scotty Scheffler yesterday too.
Man, shoot a 62.
Jeez.
I loved his reaction to winning the gold.
Yeah,
he was crying.
Yeah, kind of with our conversation on Friday, which had an email about that someone pushed back on our belief that that's not really necessarily as big of a deal as the majors.
Yeah, I might have
that emotion right there.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, is it the emotion of winning the gold,
or just hearing the anthem,
or the fact that if you think about the American dream for a moment, that in this country, you can go from one of the best at what you do to a felon back to a gold medalist. I mean, the best to being a felon to being a gold medalist. That really is the American dream. And Scotty Scheffler has lived that out this year.
He was given another opportunity on the outside. He was rehabilitated in the time that he was in a Louisville clink. And you know what? All they can ask is once we rehabilitate you, just go out there and get yours. Do better. And Scotty just continues to do better.
Plus, from the Olympics, we'll talk about the French pole vaulter who unfortunately came up short.
And
6:39. I guess coming up short would be the wrong phrase.
Yeah.
We're off and running on a Monday. It's going to be one of those days. So buckle up. It's Mornings with Sharp and Handley and Jimmy on 1620 The Zone. All right, welcome back in on a Monday. The whole gang is here. I have no flaming Cheetos hot take on House of Dragons because I don't watch it.
I don't either.
Jimmy, you watch House of Dragons?
What is that?
Okay.
Is that like
So
How to
we
Train
are-
Your
so that's a
Dragon?
no.
Is that Toothless?
Jesus, we are 0 for 3.
Yeah, it's not my thing.
That'll get you into the White Sox lineup.
No, it's too good.
So House of Dragons had its
Finale. Yeah.
and people are upset.
Did it go dark at the end and everyone's wondering if the dragon died or?
I think the afternoon show, they're big House of Dragon fans. So, were you a Game of Thrones guy?
No.
See, I wasn't either.
And I'm not opposed. I just don't have time. Like
Yeah,
I
that's
figure
where I'm
I figure when I retire, I'm going to watch all of these shows that you all talk about. But I watch mostly sports, and then I pick and choose
Then
other
maybe
things
Succession.
I watch. Yeah, no, I like those shows I watch.
Yeah, Bear.
Like boom, I'm through those.
Yep.
But like Game of Thrones, House of Dragon, I have not yet watched. But I'm seeing on my timeline, people are comparing it to Game of Thrones, that finale that they did not like.
Mhm.
That apparently last night was not a good finale, and people are upset.
Yeah, I heard hugely underwhelming is what I was seeing last night. Yeah.
All right. Well, this is a safe place because we will not give you any spoilers and will not agree or disagree that the finale was not very good.
The dragon was the guy's father. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, there's a chance there because honestly, I know it's got some type. Is it a spin-off of Game of Thrones or it's something very similar? I just know the Game of Thrones crowd is also very much into House of Dragons.
I don't know. You're talking to somebody that when I was a little kid, I thought Puff the Magic Dragon was one of the best things. I love the
Puff's just the name of the boy's magical dragon.
Yeah, but I had a magical friend.
Oh,
yeah.
What was his name? Or was it a he or a she?
It was a he.
Okay.
You guys didn't have like a friend, like an imaginary friend when you were a little kid?
I asked my mom that.
I still do.
I asked my mom that a long time ago. When that was always a thing, everyone had an imaginary friend, and she said, "Not that I recall, because I don't remember if I did." There's a lot of things in growing up that I just don't really remember, and so I figured I probably did at some point, but she said I never did, and maybe I was the youngest of 4, so I always had 3 older brothers.
I loved the movie when I was a little kid, but then as you get older and you go back and you listen to Puff the Magic Dragon song,
Yeah, it's about weed.
It's kind of depressing.
It's about smoking the weed.
That didn't depress me. That usually helped my depression.
Well, there's also a dragon lives forever, but
yeah.
not so little boys.
Oh,
no,
weird.
Yeah,
just when you think it's an innocent little childhood endeavor, there's always got to be other interpretations of this.
I just tell Alexa to play something else.
Everything just gets ruined.
So this is Andrew here. Good morning, Andrew.
Hi,
He
Andrew.
said, so the whole season of House of Dragon went towards setting of the war over the Iron Throne. And the finale shows the armies marching and them ends. This takes place 200 years before the original Game of Thrones.
It's a prequel.
So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Also, congratulations in order to the Happers. Connor announced it officially. Do you think he knows who the father is?
They had sex.
Well, hopefully they got that confirmed at some point.
That could be a bit.
That's awesome. Connor is a girl dad.
He is a girl dad.
He has him and his wife Jackie have a newborn Sophie. So
Yeah,
congratulations. We have added to the army of people here at 1620.
Stay out of radio. Stay out of radio, kids.
No coincidence that Shafe and Happer had kids close to each other.
Yeah.
No pineapples involved.
I mean, Shafe won.
Whoa. No. I know them fairly well. I don't think they dabble in that lifestyle.
I'm talking about fruit. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't think they dabble in that
Not about
lifestyle.
that.
Vitamin C.
No.
All right. So the scrimmage on this, are we calling it a scrimmage? I would call it a practice.
Yeah.
The 1890 practice.
They got their steps in.
It's a great idea. There were a couple of other things. First of all, they are open to a lot of ideas to reach into the passion of Nebraska fans. And it was, you're walking up to the stadium and people were lined up outside.
Yeah.
I would say they said 3,500 tickets were sold. I would say it was close to 4,000. And I don't know that anybody I talked to that I saw there went away and I got screwed. I had $25 down the drain. They got entertained. I mean, and it was lengthy.
Yeah.
At one point I thought, wow, this is going on a while. and it was warm.
I was dealing with that myself.
But they gave
not myself personally. But
they gave the caveat at the end that there's going to be signing autographs and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of cool, and I loved it. I think it's going to become a tradition, and people will plan for it. So expect this to grow. I suggested, I said, what about streaming it? They don't have the ability because of where they practice, but what about selling admission to practices early? Like the first couple of days of camp.
You'll get a taste.
They don't have, it's not really like in the Hawks Championship Center or when they practice outside, it's not real conducive to having large crowds.
Right.
And if they open this up, that there would be 2,000-3,000 people that would come. So there's a lot of ideas that are out there. It also reiterated to me watching this, college football needs an exhibition game.
Yeah.
They've talked about it in the spring. I think college football needs one exhibition game in the fall. It can be a controlled exhibition game, not like the NFL.
Yeah.
It can be run some 7-on-7, 11-on-11. You control it. Two teams get together. Maybe you don't even have to open it up to the crowd. But
kind of a joint practice type thing.
But what if you did a joint raise money for NIL?
Right.
I think college football needs an exhibition game.
Yeah, and I think there are certain schools where it would be very beneficial if you were to do it, say the NIL route, that you would get fans that would want to, again, it's all about access. It's unique access that you can get to the lead up to the season. So you have a better idea of what you're looking at. Because a lot of people, think about it, if you had 35 to 4,000 on Saturday compared to 55 to 60 in the spring game, a lot of people, the last actual image of this team where things have changed was back in the spring. So you're essentially going off of how you think the season is going to go based on conversations that we have, reports, following your favorite beat writers, getting content that you possibly can, getting the video that they'll let out there every now and then. That's essentially the access is close to the season and the kickoff that you get. It's something that I do think, again, not maybe for every college football fan base, but for extremely passionate college football fan base, a lot in the SEC. I think there'd be a good chunk in the Big Ten as well, Big 12.
Don't you think if the TV's paying a lot of money? I mean, a lot of money. And they want programming, live sports.
Yeah, especially.
Don't you think if the TV execs said to the SEC and the Big Ten and their other TV partners, hey, we need some content in August, we'd like an exhibition game?
Yeah, can we get like 48 hours of round-the-clock, just exhibition games that you can...
I don't know I'd go that. I would let schools choose if they want to play or not.
Yeah.
Do an exhibition game. But if the TV exec said, we would like a football game in August, an exhibition, we'd be willing to show it. That might help further this discussion. But I think there's a lot of schools that would benefit from either a joint practice or an exhibition game.
Yep. I don't disagree one bit about that. Again, for two purposes that it would serve. One, for your fan base, but also you're having that opportunity. This is where I think it kind of breaks up a little bit of the monotony of fall camp when you hear players talk about, oh man, you get to that wall, you get to that grind, you're tired of seeing the same player day in and day out that you're competing against or with. You need something to kind of break it up a little bit. I think joint practices serve that, on top of not always knowing what they're going to throw at you. So you do get a little bit of the element of not knowing what to expect and see how you can react. I think for young players in key positions like quarterback, like linebacker, areas where even wide receiver, where you might see a young player who you think is going to impact, and everything is not on script. So you're going up against a different team, and it doesn't have to be even a Power 4 team. Could be a MAC team that comes in that you're trying to benefit each other by just throwing different things they're not used to, but also keeping guys engaged into fall camp. I'm not saying that Nebraska or any other school, all of a sudden they just start losing focus. I just think it's only natural. We all remember when we were playing high school football. You start in August 1st or whatever the equivalent is to that. You get halfway through and all of a sudden you're dragging. You need something to kind of break that up. And I think that would serve a great purpose there as well.
All right, Jimmy's got an update coming up here in a little bit. Plus, it wasn't all, now that we're talking about Puff the Magic Dragon, it was not all rainbows and butterflies. You guys never saw Puff the Magic Dragon, the movie?
No, I never saw the movie, no. I just remember the song.
I watched that movie a lot when I was a little kid.
I was a supporter of the message, but no, I haven't seen it.
Peter, Paul, Mary, right? The song. Okay. And then.
Oh, yeah, Saved by the Bell. Zach's parents went to go see him. He did something bad. And
they did.
Got caught.
And then I saw Meet the Parents, where Ben Stiller brings up Robert De Niro, that the song was actually about smoking weed, and that sets off Robert De Niro.
When you're a little kid, you just think it's about dragons and magic.
Puff's just it's just the name of the boy's magical dragon.
And while you're watching it, your parents are like snickering. And you're like, I have no idea why they're laughing. Until you're a little bit later.
Why'd they eat all my candy?
Why do you keep looking at my hat?
It's just...
it's gorgeous.
It wouldn't shock me if like Puff was on there. It's got a lot of color.
It's 3 cows.
They're lovely cows. I would wear the shirt.
It's like the guy that wears the shirt that says sports. You're all about the fair right now. You got the fever.
Iowa State Fair opens up this week.
It's just got a lot of color going on.
Who doesn't like deep fried butter?
Hey, you still got the baseball logo on the side. It's fine. It's just it's catching my attention every time I look over there. I'll try to get more at your eye level.
Are you amused by cows?
Kind of, especially colorful cows.
We should get a cow.
We got blue, red, and yellow.
Fair Fever, catch it 24 and 2024.
Just like those blue and yellow purple pills.
It's a retro font too. It's got a lot going on in the bill there, or I'm sorry, on the crown there.
It's a trucker hat.
It is.
It's got the Velcro in the back, not the snap-on.
Oh, it's Velcro.
Yeah.
This is a great hat. It should go up in your rotation. Not a starter, but definitely
I think you should wear that when you tee off today. It'll be the talk of the tournament.
Yeah.
You are going to need a hat today.
Yeah, it doesn't match what I'm going to wear.
Okay. Well,
I already got my outfit.
Are you going to be in
Bagger Vance?
Yeah. Okay.
He's got like 5 different colors on there. You can make anything match off.
But there were some things at the scrimmage that probably need to be worked on between now and UTEP, and some guys that look different. Some guys that I've questioned that I'm like, oh, okay, I see you out there working. Plus more on Bud Crawford and what he did late Saturday night into Sunday. That whole broadcast. Wow. They gave away a car. I thought Jackie Moon was going to come out and get in the ring.
It was wrestle bear.
It was such a weird, it's just a weird thing. But Bud is 41-0. 41-0.
Some things just don't change.
Bud, fight 2 more times, retire at 43-0. It is, you have to take a step back and go, dang, he's 36 years old and he's doing what he's doing. We'll do an update with Jimmy coming up next. We'll talk Colorado football at 8. Evan Bland, Jacob Bigelow stopped by, our Monday friends, on a Monday show on 1620 The Zone.
Welcome back to sports. Okay. The U.S. 3x3 men's team was eliminated from the Olympics yesterday. After a 21-6 loss to the Netherlands, they can only manage 2 field goals while giving up 3 touchdowns. Tough day, couldn't run the ball. Americans, who went 2-5 at the Olympics, that's not good. Shot 28% from the field, while the Netherlands, home of Ned Niederlander, went 14-21 and cruising to the lopsided win. The U.S. led 3-1, getting a 3-pointer from a friend of the show, Dylan Travis. The score was tied at 4-4, and then the Netherlands took over. They finished on a 17-2 run and ended the game with 3:27 left on the clock, and then they did a celebratory dance. Travis finished with 2 points, 2 rebounds. His early three was the only one for the Americans on the day, as they went 1 of 11 from beyond the arc. In 5x5 basketball, as the Americans took its final step, finishing off Olympic pool play with to go 3-0. 104-83 over Puerto Rico, so they will not become a state, to clinch the top overall seed in the medal round. That'll begin tomorrow when they host Brazil at 2:30. That's in the afternoon. You can watch. Take the day off from work. Also, in Team USA's medal round bracket are Serbia and Australia. The winner of that game will face either the U.S. or Brazil, but not both, because that would be cheating. In the opposite bracket, Canada faces France, and the Germans will play Greece. Ooh, Giannis. In baseball, congratulations to your Chicago White Sox, who have been winless for almost a month. They are making the worst kind of history, or best, depending on grudges some may hold. The woeful White Sox lost their 20th consecutive game yesterday, the major's longest skid in 36 years. And one short of the American League record as Chris Flexen wasn't flexing as he's chased early in a 13-7 defeat against the Twins. Royce Lewis hit a 3-run homer off Flexen in the 6th inning that gave Minnesota an 8-0 cushion. The White Sox are now a god-awful 27-87, and it is wonderful. They cut it to 10-7 in the 8th. Couldn't get any closer. Sucks to be them. They go for 21 in a row tonight at Oakland in front of a couple of handfuls of fans of the Coliseum. You could put that on the board. And finally, according to a draft of an NCAA notice of allegations, current Michigan football coach Sharon Moore is potentially facing punishment from the NCAA for a violation of rules stemming from an investigation into an illegal scouting sign-stealing scheme, including allegedly deleting numerous text messages with former football staffer Connor Stalions, who is at the center of the investigation. Former head coach and great man Jim Harbaugh, former linebackers coach Chris Partridge, no family, and Denard Robinson, the one and only, formerly assistant director of personnel, all are accused of level 1 violations. The head coach responsibility rule would come into play for Harbaugh, who did not provide phone and email records to the NCAA and is accused of not cooperating with the NCAA. 2 middle fingers and on to your Los Angeles Chargers bolt up.
Okay.
Looking forward to that Netflix special.
So Michigan has more resources. They're more powerful. There will be lawyers. They can drag this out and just drag it and drag it and drag it. But if by chance this goes through, and wasn't it Jim Tressel? Didn't the Colts take action against Jim Tressel?
Yeah.
Okay, so
no sweater vest for him.
So the Chargers, because if not, then the NFL steps in.
Mm-hmm.
So the Colts took action against when Tressel left Ohio State and he was in the NFL. So the Chargers could do that with Harbaugh. I think Michigan thought once Harbaugh was gone, that this would go away. Ward Manuel, the AD, has some splaining to do because your head coach is front and center. Yeah. I get it. You just stretch this out. And there'll be lawyers, and there'll be lots of lawyers, and you hope that it will go away. But the fact that it has now been confirmed that Connor Stalions was on the sidelines for a Central Michigan game.
Our eyes did not deceive us.
Is wild.
Yeah.
Absolutely wild.
I got questions to Central Michigan.
That has been confirmed. And that's, last week we were talking about this and I said, I think this might happen, is Central Michigan had to make a move with a guy that had worked for Harbaugh for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I still think this will go on and on and on. The NCAA will be gone and Michigan will be scot-free. But boy, if the NCAA wins, Michigan football is, I know for Ohio State fans, the only way to beat Michigan was the NCAA. But if this goes through and this happens, Michigan football, it's going to take a long time because you'll lose your head coach.
Yep.
You're going to lose your athletic director.
I still take my championship.
I like juicy details. I like reading about Michigan and Colorado football this weekend.
Well, and can we?
It's 1994.
Can we just say the ultimate tragic part of this, if you're a Michigan fan, is I really don't think you needed to go to those lengths to win football games. I mean, we saw that team. The team was good. You didn't really need to do all of this. And the whole, okay, that guy's riding off into the sunset, so to speak, Jim Harbaugh being, just kind of like Pete Carroll did. You know, you exit stage left because the posse's coming. You know, we've seen that before. I thought, I agreed with you when, and this goes back to last year, I felt the major culprit of this entire thing, and essentially because Jim Harbaugh was not cooperating at all, that the NCAA was sick of him, but once he was out of college football, then they felt like, hey, okay, not our problem anymore. We can move on to other things, and we can start figuring out our exit strategy as a organization in the NCAA. The fact that you replace Jim Harbaugh with a guy that is front and center of all this, with the deleting of the 52 text messages and the thread to Connor Stallions amongst, remember, also a previous violator when it came to ticky-tack stuff, but impermissible contact during the COVID period that he had to essentially negotiate a punishment for. So now not only did you replace Jim Harbaugh with a guy that had an NCAA negotiated punishment in the past, but now is also a big part of what we all thought, oh, this is a Harbaugh thing because it was his head coach. But that Sharon Moore is one of those guys that is a big part of this. So it's kind of hard for the NCAA to move on from it because you still have one of the major players that is now taking over that football program. So by doing nothing, which many people expected, like myself, expected the NCAA to do nothing because they typically talk a big game, but when it comes down to it, they usually don't execute the enforcement. This goes back to something you said on Friday, and I thought they were going to try to do this with Kansas. You've got one parting shot before you are completely diminished of what you used to be as an organization, the NCAA, that is.
Nick,
that you could hammer somebody and say, you all thought we didn't have it in us. We do. We're out. You guys can run your football however you want to, but don't say that we didn't have one big swing at this thing.
Man, it's going to suck.
Enjoy the championship.
Hey, it's going to suck when they have to go back and take Michigan out of the Maps commercial.
It kind of pops up and then it just like goes, then the NCAA comes crashing down on it. So it can't fully pop up.
Instead of the big house, they have the NCAA logo. Instead of the Jumpman logo on the field, it's the NCAA logo.
That would agree. It just pops up.
By the way, Colorado, your football program taking L's.
When you're compared to Grand Theft Auto,
well,
that's pretty cool.
The Big Ten delivered an L to Colorado. I like Colorado. I like vacationing there.
Mm-hmm.
I like the rapids.
Yeah.
I like the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
I like Denver. You know what? The Big Ten said to Colorado, "You're flyover country." The Maps commercial that was released on Friday. Is it better?
I knew without having any insight whatsoever that they would lean into the Hollywood Hill, which they did. Yeah, it's fine. I liked it. You guys know I'm a big fan of Silver Linings, so they didn't change anything.
They are. I've seen it put to the Game of Thrones, but the best one I saw. You remember the old HBO, not Max, but those of us that
when you turn it on, it goes
had the crank dial on the TV.
Oh yeah,
HBO, and it was like dun 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 dun, and it had a big lead in.
Yeah, and it goes in through like the B. Yeah.
So there, I'll have to find it because I was playing on the internet last night.
Because you had power back.
I had power back. Yes.
You got to play around on the internet. I get it.
Thank you, OPPD. But they did it to that.
That's
and
awesome.
It finished with that, and it's pretty cool. But it shows you that Colorado, you're flyover country. And just think, if a flight from LA to the East Coast could only take 30 seconds.
Oh, I know.
How great would that be?
Yep.
Also,
like teleporting.
Also, I have another question about it. Nebraska is not as isolated anymore. Can we still call Lincoln the San Diego of the Big Ten?
No, we can't.
What is Nebraska now?
We're now the Nebraska of the Big Ten.
No, they could be the Phoenix because we have some warm weather in the fall.
Okay. But is Lincoln now the Lincoln of the Big Ten?
It is. It's back to being just normal Lincoln. And Otts and I were talking about this on Friday. They do realize the balloons have been canceled.
I know. That was what people caught right away. So the Nebraska one is always like, because of, where it started.
Yeah.
Before
it gets going,
West Coast.
Before it gets going, you're already looking at Iowa.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Big Ten isn't super familiar with Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
So, the balloons have been gone for a while. We're very conscientious around here about the earth and ducks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the helium shortage.
Very controversial.
But yeah, we don't have balloons anymore. Yeah. Now, what I would like to see done here, because this is arguably one of the top 3 things that the Big Ten has ever done, is the Maps commercial.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see them do a commercial for the Tupac, for Oregon State and Washington State.
Like a Maps
Why
one?
can't they do a 30-second Maps commercial for the Pac-2?
Well, you'd really have to lean into all of the things around. Well, God, could you even get 2 seconds of content out of Corvallis?
It's a lovely town.
And then Pullman?
Hey,
between Pullman and Corvallis?
People that love sports are talented. They could pull it off. The other question I had, do you think that it's that quick to bike from L.A. to Lincoln?
It's going to take just a little bit longer than what the Maps commercial would lead you to believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Not much, but just a little bit.
The other thing about the Big Ten this weekend, now it's not all hate for the Big Ten. We love the Big Ten. Is the Big Ten gave a lot of people a gift this weekend, or maybe it was the 4 new schools that joined. Did you guys take advantage of the BTN Plus free for a year?
There's 4 magical letters. UCLA.
Oh,
promo code and
4 letters. I was thinking.
You got yourself a free year.
So it started with USC.
Yeah.
So all of the 4 schools, it works on Peacock too, by the way.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. So the 4 schools for BTN Plus, which is $90 a year, they gave them to share with their fans a free code for a year.
Yep.
Well, their social media put it out, and the rest of the Big Ten, you cheap asses, all jumped on it.
I did.
And broke the site late Friday night into Saturday morning. That got the free
drunk purchase
$89.99. Now, you got to remember to cancel it next year, next July 25th, or use a credit card that's going to expire.
Yep.
So you're fine because they don't charge you.
Yeah,
so you get a free year.
They're like, hey, we're trying to bill you, but your credit card is expired. Oh,
so
I like this.
So whoever was running the site realized that, wow, there's a lot of activity
No, there's this many UCLA fans.
And they were judging it by, let's say you got the USC or the UCLA code. The USC code was one I saw first, and then people are like, oh, let's try UW 2024.
Yeah.
Let's do Oregon 24. And so all of these codes were working. Is the USC one, you had to put what your favorite team was?
Yeah.
Like what your favorite sports were and what your favorite team was?
People put Nebraska.
People were doing a lot of Nebraska. So they caught on to it.
I did too.
And so they shut it down. They shut that code down.
I got in there before they shut it down.
But good for all. I mean, hey.
That's why you put USC water polo or something like
that. Or you like make it privately you send it out. They put it out over social media.
Yeah.
What do they, people are gonna be like, okay, let's see here.
Yeah. Love my Bruin women's soccer.
Well, and you can still, I'm trying to remember how it worked before. So when I had it,
see if you can go there
when I had it, and I had the Nebraska content, you put Nebraska down as the school, you still have access to other non-Nebraska events, right? So you could still, in theory, put down USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, yet you'd still have access to the non-conference basketball slate, not necessarily just involving the school you put down, I believe. I might be wrong. Maybe you are pigeonholed to that content, but I thought you could watch other Big Ten teams outside of the team that you chose. So if they're still doing that and honoring that, I think, I might be off on this, but I think you could still put in the USC or UCLA code, choose UCLA or USC as your team, or Washington or Oregon, and still be able to watch universal Big Ten content. Because the only reason I've ever gotten it is to watch some of the non-conference basketball games and then baseball. That's really the only reason I've ever had it.
So when we get bad camera angles from the 4 new schools, you can't complain. Right. That's just like if you were
not paid a dime.
If you were getting an illegal Bud Crawford stream on Saturday night, you are not allowed to complain about the lead up to him finally fighting.
I couldn't.
Or why if you're
very well.
if you're watching on TikTok when they get shut down and they have to restart their screen, and so then you have to go back out of the TikTok app and you got to go back in. You got to go find the live.
Okay, so then the one we were watching was definitely not through TikTok then. It must have just been one of the many illegal streams. which I've dabbled in every once in a while before we had our Chicago Bear the GeoMap hack on YouTube TV. We had to do that a couple addresses that I've got some follow-up emails of things that I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have went there. Stuff of I don't know if I infiltrated completely into the dark web, but I came close. I think one of those streams was very close into the dark web. The things we'll do for our football, though.
Yeah.
Free stuff.
Things you'll do for a Bud Crawford fight.
Yeah. That's true.
Watch the Saudis, watch a raffle,
mm-hmm.
watch an Eminem concert. Now, if you...
Who had money on Lose Yourself?
An hour seems to be a little long from the end of the last fight before the main event. Now, it's a build-up to it.
Mm-hmm.
The hour was kind of long. I still can't get over the car thing. Like they had a raffle. Like it's the 50-50 when you go to a ballpark. They had a raffle. Seriously, it was like Jackie Moon.
Did we find out if Shriner or Jimmy or those guys won the raffle?
I don't know.
If they participated in the raffle?
And then they went and get the guy. They got the guy in the stands to walk him to the ring, and he wasn't like super excited. He's probably like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah.
And now
what are y'all doing to me?
I got the Sheik. The Sheik is in the ring.
Anytime the Sheik shows up, I mean, I remember Cannonball Run. Okay, the Sheik usually means good times coming.
Like, what was the car thing for?
I have no clue. It was just so
hey, don't fool me, man. That's why I don't go on The Price is Right, because I understand that if you win stuff, you got to pay the taxes. The taxes are expensive. Maybe that was the guy's first thing is, oh my God, I just won this car that I have no idea what the car is, but I'm going to have to pay these taxes and I can't afford it. So I'm going to have to sell the car. But his reaction was like, okay.
Well, I heard the event, and this was coming from Shriner, who was out there too with Jimmy and Dan. By the way, Dan looked so happy out there. But the event itself, I heard, was really disorganized.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just not very well organized between the weigh-ins to the actual fight day. We'll have to get John. I don't know if he's on today or tomorrow, but yeah, I saw him.
Why? Because there was meat glazing of the Saudis as well?
That doesn't always go over all that well with certain people. I know John's not a big fan of that.
I was done with the broadcast when they showed James Harden and Scottie Pippen during the Pitbull fight.
Yeah.
And they're like, who was better?
I don't know if that's a conversation we even really want to ever have.
Also, I didn't know Kate Beckinsale. I don't know if you guys saw her.
Oh, I did not see her.
They only showed her 4,000 times.
I didn't see Kate Beckinsale, no.
Yeah, they kept showing her over and over.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I must have missed that one. Kate Beckinsale. That's a random one right there. Okay.
Well, there were a lot of celebrities there. Into the Equitable Bank inbox. This is from Greg in Michigan. Subject line, no way. This U of M thing will blow over, in my opinion. Other teams doing the same will come out. NCAA complicit by not allowing helmet mics until this season. This will be dragged out.
I'm still on the fence at all. It's kind of like Nebraska football right now. I'm excited. Believe when I see it. The NCAA in enforcing something to the full capability of their power, and when you start getting into a big institution like Michigan football coming off a national championship, when you had the NCAA president himself saying that Michigan won it fair and square, I still have my reservations that this thing will be fully investigated and enforced. Now, having said that, there's something about the desperate man. And I think the NCAA is playing the character or the role of the desperate man of we want to show people that we had it in us.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's always that unpredictable nature of everything that I've always thought the NCAA was incapable of doing when it came to enforcement of big schools and big money and not wanting to go toe-to-toe with the legal process. Because you're right. I mean, Michigan's they would not accept anything laying down. That usually I feel the NCAA grows tired or just all of a sudden runs out of resources to fully enforce, that they do. It ends up being some type of very strong worded probation. There could be something more to this, but you're right. It ain't happening this year. but Sherrone Moore's still coaching 2 years from now, 3 years from now. If he's present at Michigan and the NCAA is still functioning, there could be something to this. There could be something about the desperate man want to flex a little bit.
We wanted a piece of hide last fall. They won a national championship. Harbaugh left. It seemed like to me that the anger had subsided.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like if you're Ohio State, you're angry at Michigan for multiple reasons. But across college football, I've been like, okay, Harbaugh's gone.
Yeah, right. But who's he replace with? That's the thing too that I think is interesting about this one is typically when you would have a coach that might be trying to get ahead of something that would not necessarily be replaced by a staffer. And if it was a staffer that wasn't necessarily in the investigation or attached to whatever might have been going on. If you get somebody on the outside, they're like, well, we're not going to punish the current coach and coaching staff, especially a guy that came from the outside that is walking into this. We'll go after the guy or maybe even the players that their hands were a little dirty in this thing. Well, now we're learning that Sherrone Moore was, at least according to the NCAA, and the notice of allegations was a big part of this, that changes things a little bit, in my opinion.
Michigan's response will be double jeopardy. You penalized us last year.
And that's why I thought nothing would ever happen. I thought with the Big Ten giving them the suspension, I thought, I said this last year, the Big Ten did the NCAA a huge solid by suspending Harbaugh the last 3 games of the regular season. And so the NCAA could say, you know what? That we're satisfied. Somebody stepped in. We didn't have to. Again, we can now use our resources and the other things that are on our table, and we can investigate those. Thank you, Big Ten, for doing what we would probably wanted to eventually have done, but we didn't. You did it for us, and we will support that decision.
All right, when we come back, there is something that looks all too familiar with Nebraska football from Saturday night's experience. For $25, you got to see something that hasn't changed. We'll get into that. Coming up at 8 o'clock, we'll talk some Colorado football. Evan Bland is about an hour away with his thoughts on what he saw on Saturday. Just observations, not reactions. Long time to go in camp. And then Jacob Bigelow will stop by as well on 1620 The Zone. Just think if you'd been like in, I don't know, a coma for a while, like multiple years, and you woke up and you saw Snoop Dogg at the Olympics.
Yeah, he is
being paid handsomely to hang out with NBC. So it's a shame that NBC thought that the events were going to be so poor that they needed all these celebrities, but they are paying, reportedly, Snoop Dogg gets $500K a day.
Jesus.
To be over in Paris and do all the Snoop Dogg stuff.
And even Flavor Flav representing the women's water polo team.
Now, I don't think he's getting paid.
No, I think
he's
he just
legit
did that.
there, but Snoop Dogg is getting paid to be there.
Doing all of the video hits, doing his things in between competition. Yeah, I mean, although I don't think I saw him do anything on golf. He's been primarily swimming.
But you know what? I mean, good
bit
job.
on the gymnastics,
good job,
too.
NBC. It's a slap on the athletes. Instead of telling their stories and letting the athletes and the events, you went all celebrities. And I would not notice this if it wasn't for the amount of celebrities that they show at every friggin' event.
Yeah.
Because I've probably this year watched more Olympics. Now, the Olympics in Tokyo, the Summer Olympics in Tokyo were quirky because there were no fans.
Mm-hmm.
But I've watched not just the odd sports that we don't normally watch, but I think I've watched more Olympics this year. And I'm gambling a lot more on the Olympics. But if it wasn't for the celebrities, I would not notice this. And I don't know if you guys have noticed it or anybody else. Why can't NBC center the graphics?
I guess I haven't really noticed that.
Okay, it happens when they identify people in the stands.
Oh, okay.
But instead of centering the name, it's off center. It may be some condition that I have that it triggers my brain.
I guess I haven't
Is that
really
like a
noticed
new
that.
thing? Is this like, you remember the old ESPN2 logo?
Yeah.
That was all funky?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like that world.
They're bringing it back?
But if you see it, if you're watching the Olympics today and you see like somebody is identified in the crowd and they super their name.
Yeah. Okay.
Look to see if it's centered or not.
I won't be able to unsee it too. Because if it's something that is that subtle that clearly I haven't noticed, but I've seen it, no shortage of celebrity mentions, especially between gymnastics and swimming is where you see the most of them. Started to see a little bit of track this last weekend, track and field. But for the most part, it's all been swimming or gymnastics. We still got a little bit more of that going on. I'll notice that. And if you're right, not saying you're wrong, but if it is noticeable to the point that you're like, what? I won't be able to see it. So thanks a lot. I'm going to put that in my brain.
So NBC paying Snoop and off-center graphics and more celebrities than actual events, they have hit a home run. The Gold Zone on Peacock is the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
That is, life's better when you have a red zone-ish channel.
And John Travolta.
What if they did that with like we're ramping up here in the political world. What if we had a red zone for politics? Like you had all the major networks in a quad box.
Or during a debate, you could have different ways to watch it. You could have just the regular feed, and then you could have the coach's room, the film room. You could have like the they're not necessarily like speech critiquers, but
fact checkers.
Well,
that didn't go over so well last week.
But having the fact-checking viewing room while the debate's going on, and you have two fact-checkers that are, nope, wrong. Actually, no, that's incorrect. Oh, well, that was kind of true. That could be fun, too. See? Just everybody always wants options.
Your definition of fun is probably a little bit different from other people's definition of fun.
That's probably true.
What will not be fun this year is if Ed Foley is the reason why Nebraska is not successful.
Yeah.
So I think if you feel good about a team you're on, and individually or your position group, you don't want to be the reason why you've chosen to lose that day.
No.
You don't want to be the reason that you've held a team back. And trust me, just their body language, stuff they say, their coaches, what they say, Nebraska feels very good at where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know Rule addressed it again on Saturday night. I would be disappointed if they were not ahead of where they were in the spring. I mean, they have new bodies. They have some competition. They have a desire to be really, really good. If they were not ahead of where they are in spring, I'd be greatly disappointed. That's why I still think, and and Saturday night was a little bit slow at the beginning. Now they're in pads and they're going full speed. But after, I don't know, probably the first 10 minutes where I thought they were a little bit sloppy, things look normal. I mean, they're a veteran-led team. So I would be disappointed, I said it last week, if Nebraska looks sloppy against UTEP. Like if Nebraska plays a really awkward, disjointed game, I would be really, really surprised.
2019 South Alabama, I think is a good example of that. That was a very sloppy game.
Yeah, I expect this team to not look like they're going to look at the end of the year, but not, hey, we just arrived and, hey, my name's Dylan. Hey, Jamal, how you doing? Hey, if you go down here and turn right on 10th Street, I'm going to throw you a pass. But you don't want to be the reason why you're holding Nebraska back. And I'm throwing Ed Foley into this because did you notice who was helping out with punt returns?
No.
So Ron Brown was down with
I know he was
guys.
working with the returners. Yeah,
he was down with the 4 punt return guys. But Ed Foley is the special teams guy. I've said this, Ed Foley, nice guy, super nice guy, likes to have a conversation with people. He's Mr. Nebraska. They're like, hey, you're not going to be able to recruit and get the main guy out of Nebraska, but go around and visit people. And you're in charge of special teams. And special teams is an area where I think is a concern, and Saturday night did not change my opinion. Now, Alvano is on his way back, but they do possibly have some depth at place kicking.
Yeah.
Like Hole, I want to see more of him. They had a little kickoff, and guys were banging it from 40 plus.
Yep.
Holes were right down the middle.
Yeah, 47, I believe.
I was like,
Yeah.
So it looks like kicking the ball, they have some depth, but Alvano is on his way back. The one thing that looked the same from the last time Nebraska played a game, or even in the spring, the consistency that is needed at punter. Brian Buschini is not able to deliver that right now. And his issues that he had last year and he had in the spring looked exactly the same on Saturday night. And that is not comforting.
Yeah, I figured that's where you're going with special teams on that one too. Because, yeah, I was between Hole and, how do you say his last name? Amanelli. That was encouraging. I mean, if there's, we're getting into the horror show that was 2019 when you went through a bevy of kickers and nobody could actually kick one through the uprights, even at a respectable distance. That was encouraging to see Saturday night. The Buschini inconsistencies. I mean, you see, and this is what we saw last year too. But you get like just a wild shank, and I would think in that setting too. In a practice setting, that's when you're probably doing your best work. That's where a lot of the guesswork is out of there. And you don't feel the overwhelming pressure of, okay, we're going to flip the field. It's on me. I got all these people watching us, whether I'm on the road or at home. And I'm sorry, but 3,500 fans, that shouldn't be any type of indication of how you're able to perform in that setting. So that continues to be a situation where if you don't have, if you have a good defense, and you have a good offense, but when you are getting into those games, in the close games where you have to play a little bit of the flip in the field position, that's probably the one area out of anything right now that I think it's bad. I'll just go up flat out and say it. I think it's bad.
So again, I went in and I wanted to be able to tell true freshmen if they look like true freshmen. I wasn't even thinking about vets, like. If a guy's been here for a while, I expect him to do what he is there to do. We're too far along in a career that has had some good in it, but man, inconsistency.
Yeah.
I don't know if you like your balls high or deep, because the hang time not a problem, but kicking it deep seems to be an issue. And a guy that is punted that much in college should not be that inconsistent. Where you go from his first punt that I was watching was, all right, we got something. Yeah. That looks like the Brian Buschini, the good Brian Buschini. And then what happened? The next punt was a shank.
Shank, yep.
And I'm like, oh man, you are too far down the road as a collegiate punter to have inconsistencies. Because give you a break, you shanked one. What do you do next? Poor punt.
Mm-hmm.
Special teams cannot be the reason why Nebraska is not successful. But that whole operation, returners, and it's still unknown. They had an interesting mix of guys that were practicing returns. Like Zaire Wright got my attention. A little bit smaller than I thought, but he was back returning punts. Special teams can't be the reason that holds Nebraska back. I think they have fixed areas. Those areas that were a concern coming out of spring are still a concern, and there's people that need to be held accountable that are in charge of special teams. And Ed Foley is a guy that needs to be discussed because that area has to be better. And I'm place kicking aside because the main guy wasn't there, but the guys that were kicking, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll hold off on the place kicking, but the punting looks exactly the same, and it can't look exactly the same.
Right. And so I was encouraged with the options that they were thrown out there. We knew Emmett Johnson would most likely be out there, but I was with you on Zaire Wright, and then Ja'Cory Barney, who could be a human highlight reel. I think that's an area that, as long as you have options, and you bring up the Ron Brown impact on that too, where you're getting a little bit more concentrated effort on that and teaching on that. I think that's also an area where I will reserve any type of major concern or judgment until we see that play out. Squarely comes down to punting. And I remember it was the first spring game that Brian Buschini was a part of. And I think his first punt, he had the wind behind him, but then he drilled it like 60 something yards. It's some insane punt. And from that point on, it's been exactly the same. It's been one good kick followed up with a bad one. Then the bad one seems to parlay into another bad one, whether it's a shank or it's just zero distance whatsoever. It's a modest 30-yard punt with really no effects of any wind, so it shouldn't lead to that. At some point you wonder if that inconsistency is just what a guy's about. You got to move on from that. But
so who do you move on to?
Do you go to Cook, though? I mean, that's the other thing. If you're looking at people that you have around or anybody else that you feel is going to give you that consistency, because I would think at some point, and I think what you bring up is interesting from the standpoint of if there is essentially the low man on the totem pole or the weak link of any operation, that you try to bring that weaker link up to speed. You try to do everything you can, but what you bring up there with Brian Buschini is you essentially have seen this before. I mean, he just didn't come into camp this year. And it's not like all of a sudden, boy, we didn't see that last year. Dude was automatic. He's dealing with something right now. Let's let him work through it. This has been his time. Yeah. And the frustrating thing is, some guys, maybe they're a little bit more, their specialty as a punter, they don't have the booming leg, but they can put it in a spot. You need it to be here, they're going to deliver it there. You need it inside the 10, they're going to deliver it there. He does have a strong leg. We've seen that. He does have the ability.
Does he?
We've seen it a few times at least. We've seen him.
Did his strong leg go away 2 years ago?
It might have. I don't know. But also then
whatever the injury, what he was battling last year?
I have no clue. But
he wants to bring rain. He can. He punted high.
Yeah, and the accuracy, the hang time, stuff like that. But if it's not resulting into what that area needs to yield, and that being able to flip the field, being able to put next possession into a vulnerable situation where you're inside your own 10 or inside your own 20 and playing the field position game, if you can't get that consistently, then you've got to be looking in other areas of what you have on that roster.
They had 3 weeks to figure this out, because that's the one area that with an eye of, they've been together for 4 days, that looks exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. There's a consistency that in that particular area, and we had the same conversation about place kicking. Again, we'll see. We'll see when Tristan's healthy, but at least you saw some guys that were getting a few reps that probably made you feel a little bit better that if something happens with Tristan's recovery where he's not, all of a sudden there's a weird setback or whatever happens, that there's some depth there. I mean, if you're riding or dying with Brian Buschini, does that give anybody 100% confidence right now in the punting game? I know I don't have that. And just watching it last year, the year before, and you're right. And we knew that there was something that he was dealing with the leg, and kind of had that awkward limp at times, but then he'd come right back out and you're like, well, okay, he looks like he's hurt, but then he'd come right back out and he would kick again. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, I mean, to the original point of this, of Ed Foley, hey, that falls on you. Okay. You're making money. You are the special teams coordinator. You're the guy that's supposed to, if you don't have the solution with one guy, you got to figure out the solution for somebody else, because that can't be an area where when Nebraska does have to punt, say they do get a couple first downs, say they haven't got to the 50-yard line, but you have a chance to really turn things over to your defense, pin a team back, make them go the distance. You got to have a guy that you can rely on that's going to do that.
You also have somebody that figures out where was the guy from his first year here.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, his first year here,
way more good.
About 44 yards a punt.
Yep.
And he was a weapon for Nebraska on a not great team.
Right.
Then last year, I mean, he dropped about 4 yards per punt last year, and he punted less last year.
Mm-hmm.
And the problems in spring are the same on the first Saturday of fall camp. I don't know if they have an answer for it on why that's this way. Got to be consistent. This will be the third year punting. And in this era of NIL, I mean, should a punter and a place kicker issues be an issue?
No.
Where you can go out and buy a punter or an established punter and place kicker?
No, I wouldn't think so. And that's the other part about his issues right now too. If it is you're seeing it every day in practice, because I remember this being talked about Connor Culp when he was having the issues after he was the reigning Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Year, that he had been doing everything in practice. Now, again, consider the coaching staff at the time, but he'd been doing everything in practice that would lead them to believe that he had no issues. But then he'd get into games and he would wildly miss. And I remember talking about it as if, okay, this must be the yips. On Saturday, you saw the same thing, though. It wasn't, oh, yeah, man. I get why Buschini still gets the confidence from the coaching staff, because he's taking care of business at practice. You know, you had a chance to see that in practice. You're like, wait a minute, that looks exactly the same as it has in Saturdays. So what that issue is, what that disconnect is, yeah, as a staff, you got to figure that out. But you're right. I mean, that falls on Ed Foley to figure out, why can't we unlock that? Why can't we get the brain and the foot to do the same thing, the mental and the physical to line up? And I don't know.
Allen has figured out this problem. We don't need no Ed Foley. That's why they got Raiola, trying to avoid punting.
Fourth down, we're going for it.
That was the conversation back in December.
Around 18.
Rule goes into Ed's office and goes, hey, don't worry about it.
We got your punter.
Got you taken care of.
His name is Dylan Raiola.
Hey, we're not going to have fourth downs. We got a guy that's unbelievable.
And when we do, don't worry. We're going to go for it, and we're going to get it.
All right, 48 past the hour. We'll continue our friends or foes. We'll talk some Colorado football coming up at the top of the hour with Tyler King. Evan Bland with his thoughts. And if you think that Dylan Raiola will be a single-digit guy, will Dylan Raiola open up against UTEP in how many days, Jimmy? 26?
Yes. I had to do math.
Thank you.
Confirmed.
Thank you. We are together. Wearing number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Evan will join us. Jacob Bigelow as well on 1620 The Zone. All right, some things that you wonder when your power is out.
Now you can laugh about it.
No, I'm not laughing.
Okay,
Man, there are some people,
Yeah.
and especially today, that still don't have power.
Right.
Yeah.
Over by the campus.
Well, I've learned a lot here. To get the attention of OPPD, you had to tell them you did not have power. So if you did it in mass of your neighborhood, like a plan, you got a response.
Okay.
I met a gentleman who was fixing the power from Missouri. Nice guy. Said thank you. The power was out for 4 days.
Yeah.
He came from outside of Omaha. We discussed standing in the line at a convenience store, not very far from the house. Said, one hell of a year in terms of weather. And he goes, yeah, this is the second time I've been to Nebraska. He goes, I was here right after the tornado. And he goes, I'm back now. And I was like, oh, well, thank you. I did notice a couple of things. They're hardworking. I'm sure they'll learn some things after this is all said and done. But there are still 27,000 people in Douglas County that don't have power.
Yeah.
And some are a little bit more difficult than others where they're at. But I do appreciate their work. I want to know the backstory of the person that is running the OPPD Cares Twitter. Because, if you call, they're not answering.
Right.
So you got to go to social media. And that's where it's like, hey, if you have 1,000 people in your neighborhood that are without power, you need 1,000 people like all at once to get on them and say, hey, we don't have power, because they kind of respond to that. They don't know, and these are questions that I asked that got answered. They don't know who doesn't have power. They know areas that don't have power, but they're not specific. Like a Bob's house here doesn't have power.
Yeah.
But they need you to reach out to them if you have not. Now, by now, most people have like, dude, it's 500 degrees in my house. I got no power.
Yeah.
We have to relocate to a hotel. Thankfully, the hotels that are packed in this town aren't gouging people, because I looked at a hotel and the price was reasonable for the demand. But thank you. We'll get through this. I just hope the people that are still left, it gets taken care of today or tomorrow, because we'd be going on a week. But I want to meet the person that's running the OPPD Cares Twitter, because they got to have a lot of patience. There are a lot of angry people that are on social media.
That's
and
interesting.
They seem to be handling it fairly well.
That's it. I'm surprised, maybe I shouldn't be, to hear what you just said there, as far as they don't really know. I would assume that nowadays in 2024, you probably have some type of an alert. If maybe there's just a random outage somewhere.
So this guy asked, because I was just curious.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, it's not like we drive around and we have a monitor that says power there on that side of the street, not power there in that house. He said, you got to let us know. And I said, well, I'm letting you know I don't have power.
Did you have to stay in a hotel, right?
No.
Okay, good. Man,
well, I did. I mean, I could have, but hotels were sold out.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to pay $400 to stay in a hotel. But most of the places were not gouging. They were not like, hey, let's go College World Series here.
For this event.
But like in my neighborhood, there are still pockets that don't have power. But the street lights in like at 60th and Center, the street lights were out for like 3 days, and it was a 4-way stop. Oh, that was interesting.
Yeah.
But off of the interstate, there are still some places that don't have the lights on. And so that's been a little bit of tough.
I noticed that on Friday night over by, I think between about 84th and then back over towards like the ILQ, that those lights on the interstate were not on. So I thought, oh, that area must not have power, but then you could see through the trees where the homes that are immediately alongside, they had lights on. So I know they said 8 days when we talked on, I think this was Thursday or Friday when we talked about that, and they said 8 days. Oh yeah, because you got the phone call.
Yeah, I was told that it was going to be 6 at my place.
Yeah.
And they got it in 4.
That's good, but yeah, I would imagine now, if you're somebody, like you said, if you're somebody that doesn't have power, you've at least made that known more than once. But I would assume in the first 24 to 48 hours, where you see so much information from the city and from OPBD saying we're working on it. We have this many out, that maybe you don't necessarily report the stuff because you assume, well, they know they're just going to get to me when they get to me. But then after 2 days, you're probably at least hopefully thinking, okay, can I get an update? Can I know how close y'all are to our neck of the woods so I can get an idea here? Because I was talking to people that on Friday, they, much like yourself, still did not have it. And they were starting to have to make some decisions of, okay, do we spend the weekend somewhere else, or do we assume
move out of Omaha?
Yeah, do we assume it's going to come on at some point or what?
All right, so this is what I was thinking. I had some deep Jack Handy thoughts.
Good.
Are dogs allowed on a catwalk? I'm serious.
I think so.
Are dogs allowed on a catwalk?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, who's gonna tell them no? Who's up there running security and be like, nope, sorry, we don't allow your species. We don't allow your type of animal. Cats only.
Just some things when you're sitting in a house that has no power, but you have a phone. Just pops into my head.
Did you see an image of a catwalk? You're like, huh? What if dogs could be up there?
I was watching a baseball game and they were talking about the catwalk. And so I was like, are dogs allowed up there?
So if they bark at the park, they can't go up there.
Because really, you think about it, like cats, I mean, there aren't a lot of advantages of the cat. Like when it comes to the dog gets a lot more. Like dog
gets a lot more attention.
No one looks at a movie and goes, oh, that cat just warmed my heart. It's all about the dog.
Mm-hmm.
So like the cat has the catwalk to itself, but like if a dog is allowed there, it just ruins the purpose of the catwalk.
Yeah, but you have the dog park. You don't ever hear about a cat park.
Exactly.
Dogs have a lot of things going on in the world, but you're right. The only video of a cat or a kitten that seemed to get some run was the one where they tickle the stomach and it goes, and then it just keeps doing that. We've all seen that one, but I mean, come on. When you see a puppy don't even need to do anything like that. You see a puppy and you're just like, yeah, my day's much better now. That's just what they do. That's why I'm a dog guy. Cats make you work for their affection, Gary. You know what? The last thing I want in life.
So do I. I mean, it's
exactly. I'm around humans all day that you have to earn your affection or respect for. I don't want to go home. The last thing I need is my pet to make me do that too.
Midgets Look Up to Me said that would be a great question for Right Said Fred.
On the catwalk.
We'll talk some Colorado football. Quite the transition. Coming up next on 1620 The Zone.
Halftime brought to you by Omaha Whiskey Fest 2024, the largest celebration of whiskey in the region, coming your way September 28th at downtown Omaha, and Whiskey Wednesdays coming your way right here on Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone.
Hey, about a month from now, Nebraska and Colorado will meet in prime time at Memorial Stadium. Both have openers prior. Colorado has North Dakota State on a Thursday night. Nebraska has UTEP, and we have from the Denver Gazette, who covers the Buffs and the Colorado State Rams, Tyler King, who joins us on 1620 The Zone. Good morning, Tyler.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good. Hey, you're familiar with the Colorado Buffalo program, pre-Deion Sanders and now current Deion Sanders. First and foremost, what is it like covering Colorado football right now? Whether it be on the beat, your interaction, or from your readers on what they want and what they want to talk about. What's it like to cover Colorado football right now?
Well, I'll say there's certainly a lot more interest now than there was 2 years ago when I was covering the team. I'll say that for sure. It's certainly fun to kind of be a part of a national story with cameras around all the time and kind of endless interest from around the country. It's really not just people in Denver and Colorado. It's become a national story. It was fun to be traveling around last year while the team was on the road and things like that, and I'll get to do it again this year. So it's been a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Get off to the 3-0 start last year, and then ends up being a 4-8 season. The amount of buzz and flowers being thrown at the Colorado program and Deion Sanders in particular was quite significant, but also the end of that season. What was the overall feel with just the very first year of the highs and lows of Coach Prime and just the whole Colorado football program in 2023?
Yeah, I think it was at the end of it was pretty disappointing just considering the hot start. I'm not sure anybody expected that. I had them picked at 4-8 going into the season, so obviously I was pretty. That was kind of right on what I expected. I didn't expect them to beat TCU to open the season, but I did expect them to beat Nebraska in week 2 last year. That's the game I did pick right. But, yeah, I think people were just a little bit disappointed. But, I mean, it was kind of expected a little bit given how good the Pac-12 was last season. They just didn't have they were in a lot of those games, just couldn't finish them. And the high-end talent with, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, all those guys couldn't make up for the kind of the lack of depth they were having across the roster. And now they kind of retooled and are going back at it again this year in a brand new conference in the Big 12. So, they've talked about, how last year was about kind of restoring hope, which they did a lot during the first month of the season, like you said, when everybody was talking about the program. But now it's about making sure that they're not just talking about in September, but they're also talking about in October or November and a contender in the conference, because that's ultimately what their goal was this year.
Let's get specific. Last time we saw Colorado, they finished at Salt Lake City, ended the season on a 6-game losing streak. They open up on a Thursday night against North Dakota State. A lot of people are going to be watching. Specifically, Tyler, what do you think will be different? Like the football stuff, line play, wide receivers, all of that stuff, more consistent out of the running back position outside of one guy. Where do you think Colorado will look different for the good when we see them against the Bison?
I think it is on both lines. I think specifically with the size of both lines, that's something that's really jumped out to me so far this summer, is just seeing how much different the linemen look on both sides of the ball. Most of the offensive linemen, especially the starting five, the projected starting five right now, they were all, but the defensive line is really beefed up over the summer with a bunch of key transfers. And they really look different from the guys we saw last season. So they're productive guys that are coming from other power conferences. So whether that translates to success here, if they can gel together, I mean, it looks pretty good so far. The linemen kind of one-on-one these days have been fun to watch. And that'll be something that I think everyone will notice right away as wow, this does look a little bit different. It looks a little bit more like a power conference team, a real contender in a conference. Just the size overall, I think, is the biggest difference.
Tyler, we know that in the last couple of months have heard about the defense taking a step forward, being able to do their part, so to speak. When you look at the strength of this defense, I would assume that it's definitely in the secondary with the talent that they have there between Sanders and obviously Travis Hunter, but also what they're doing in the front seven. Where have you seen the most growth with this defense, sans the secondary?
Yeah, it would probably be at the linebacker position just because that was so inconsistent last season. The two guys in the middle, they really couldn't find just like a pairing that had chemistry and work well together and complement each other. But I think they've got that now. Yeah, they've officially fully moved Trevor Woods from safety to linebacker. He did that kind of at the end of last season and started the last couple of games here, but that's a full-time move, and he looks pretty good. He's talked about how he feels like he's seen less at the linebacker position, is able to disguise himself from quarterbacks and be even more of a weapon in the pass game. I mean, he was a guy that had a couple interceptions early in last season. So him and Levanta Bentley, who was a former Clemson transfer, those two guys seem to be like the likely starters in the middle, and that obviously needs to be a lot better. They were, one of the worst teams defenses in the country against the run last year, and that's why they just could never, the games they couldn't stay in. It was because of that. They just could not keep anybody from picking up chunk yards on the ground. And if that's going to change this year, it's going to start with the linebackers being better. Obviously, the guys up front will play a role in that as well. But just having key play at the linebacker duo was going to be really important for them this year.
What are your thoughts on new coordinators? They make a move in midseason last year, and Pat Shurmur now is full-time play caller. And then on defense, where Charles Kelly goes back to Auburn, Tyler, they bring in Robert Livingston, who I think in Cincinnati, Zach Taylor really liked him. And he was an up-and-comer in the NFL circles. Now he comes to college. What are your thoughts on the two new coordinators?
Yeah, I'll start with Shurmur because obviously he's not as new because, like you mentioned, he did take over midway through last season. He was kind of an analyst behind the scenes before that. He's talked about how he feels 20 years younger with being around college guys every day. This has been a long time since he was in the NFL and since he's been in college coaching. So it definitely feels like he's been re-energized by this. His last job before this was right nearby with the Broncos in Denver as the offensive coordinator. Just another stop for him along in the NFL. And it definitely feels like he's not going to be the same kind of coordinator we saw in the NFL, whether it was at the Giants as the head coach there or with the Eagles. I mean, he's been a play caller for a long time. And I think it's going to be a little bit different. But I think because of the amount of wide receivers they have that are really talented, they're going to be really spread out. They're going to like to get the ball to many different guys. So I don't think it's going to be the typical NFL ground and pound kind of game, especially with Shedeur Sanders as a quarterback. So I think Pat Shurmur could have a chance to kind of re-identify him or, change people's perspective of him this season. And, on the flip side, Robert Livingston was definitely a guy that people were high on, with the Bengals. He worked under Lou Anarumo for many years as D coordinator there. And he's a guy that people think was going to be a coordinator in the NFL pretty soon. But now we get the chance to show that at college, calling plays, running. It's really his defense. It's way simpler, the players have said, the playbook and things like that than what they had last year with Charles Kelly, who went back to Auburn, his alma mater. So they're really excited about the coordinator changes. It's a difficult thing to keep changing coordinators and have that kind of not have that continuity year over year, but I think they like what they've got with those two guys.
Yeah, Tyler, the one thing in watching what was obviously an outstanding season, and you see the kind of talent that Shedeur Sanders is, opponents got to him a lot. And you talked about the offensive line and just the importance of that area improving too. But just the overall wear and tear that Shedeur Sanders took a little bit. At what point last year and even this year does that become a concern when it does come to depth at that position, that if Shedeur Sanders is missing time, that there is a plan in place for them to move forward with this offense?
Yeah, that was my number one concern going into last season, was like, what the heck is this going to look like if he gets hurt? And obviously he did in the second to last game of the season. And, Ryan Staub, who was a true freshman last year, was the backup. He played pretty well, I thought, in the season finale in Utah for kind of what they were asking him to do in his first career collegiate start, as a freshman. He'll be likely the lead backup again going into the season. It seems like they are happy with his progress as well. There's some other, SEC transfers that have limited playing time that'll be competing for the backup spot as well. But it's all about keeping Shedeur Sanders upright. They say that every day, protect two, got to protect two. And he is the star of the show. That's obvious. I mean, Travis Hunter is probably the best pound for pound player, but it's all about Shedeur Sanders. This thing does not work if he's not back there playing quarterback. The offense has been designed around him, utilizing his strengths, which he is a very, very talented player. and is likely a first-round pick in next year's NFL draft. But and he's got plenty of chemistry with the new guys. He helped recruit a lot of the new offensive linemen. So hopefully that for them that translates to more success in the field, because it's all about keeping him upright. And he's also got to be a little bit better at not taking so many sacks and just getting rid of the ball when he has to. But if they can keep him upright, he's got plenty of wide receivers. Like I mentioned, he should be able to be pretty prolific and put up plenty of points for this Colorado offense.
Tyler King from the Denver Gazette joining us. All right, let's break down the season. So this is a program that's had 2 winning seasons in 16 years, and before Dion arrived, they were 1-11, and they were virtually on life support, as you were alluding to, covering him in 22. What is your expectation on what a successful season is, and what do you think internally is their expectation on what a successful season is?
It's very different. My expectation is just make a bowl game. Like you said, they've only done that a handful of times, less than a handful of times, in the last 15 years. So I think just making a bowl game is a success for them. They're not going to say that because they've got plenty of high end talent that people are going to look at that nationally and think that's a disappointment. But I feel like a bowl game would be a success, and I think right now I have them at 7-5 this season, which will put them just on the outside looking in terms of contending for the Big 12 championship. I don't think they're on the same level as like Utah or a Kansas State or an Oklahoma State, teams that I think are at the top. I think they're in the middle tier of the conference, but their expectation is going to be competing for a Big 12 title. And obviously this year with the expanded 12-team playoff, the winner gets an automatic spot. So that's going to be a success for them. But I think just making a bowl game and showing that there's tangible improvement from last year where you went 4-8 is going to be a success for this team. Like I don't think the expectation should be that high. Like they're not going to be a national title contender in my eye. And like I said, I don't really even think they should be considered at the top of the Big 12. But they're going to win some games this year, and I think a lot of the games are going to be tight. This is going to be a fun conference. So just being competitive and getting to a bowl game in this conference, I think, is a win for them.
Tyler, how much of the we were just briefly touching on it. We didn't get too much into it, but there was an athlon story about them. It almost seems like every month there's something about the culture, previous players talking about the culture that are no longer with the program. And I know some of the current players will dismiss it as well. They weren't good enough to play. So we chalk it up to that. But you get into the season, you get to a point where, maybe the wins aren't quite there and you've got a lot of new faces, just like it was a previous year too. When it does come to that unfamiliarity with each other, when things maybe are a little bit more adverse, is that a concern, or is it something to watch for, in your opinion, with this team too, when it comes to that tougher stretch of games, if Colorado's not necessarily coming out on the winning end of what this team will look like as far as sticking together?
Absolutely. I mean, everything is good now because it's preseason. Nobody's won or lost the game yet. So everybody is happy now. Everybody's getting along now. But like you said, they're going to face some adversity this year. They're not going to go 12-0 in the regular season. And that is always the challenge when you are bringing together so many new players, whether it's freshmen from high school or out of the transfer portal like Colorado does, and kind of bringing them together and bonding them. I mean, it's just kind of impossible to do that without them being together for at least one season, likely multiple. So that is always the concern when these guys are still relatively new to each other. So that'll be something to watch, how this team responds when adversity hits. Last year, things kind of snowballed at the end of the season, like you guys mentioned, with the losing streak to end the season. And it did seem like there was a little bit, like I said, of a snowball effect. So, that's definitely going to be something to watch for. Like they very well could lose, and I will likely pick them to lose week 2 at Nebraska, and we'll see what happens then, because then they've got to go to another hostile environment at Colorado State, a team that's itching to beat them and get some revenge. So they're going to be tested early, and we'll see if kind of what everything they've been doing over the summer and now in August and fall camp will pay off in terms of trying to come together and build a team, because it is not easy to do in one off season, but that's what they're trying to do, because they want to win now. They had to bring talent in from last year to replace guys. So that's the challenge is trying to bring guys together, and we'll see if it pays off.
Hey, Tyler, we appreciate your time. Have a great week.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime.
That's Tyler King from the Denver Gazette. Just make it through this year, then start over and then grab your popcorn because there'll be a lot of stories told about the 2 years of Deion Sanders at Colorado. I was listening to Tyler talk. I think in terms of position groups, I can only peg 3 where I think Colorado is better than Nebraska right now. Quarterback, wide receivers, defensive backs.
Yep. Well, and you got offensive line that is three transfers between your tackles and your guards. Defensive line, all transfers. Secondary, I think that's a talented group. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders is always going to get that nod with his talent. Wide receivers, I mean, you saw the picture. They look strong.
They got some pass catchers. I mean, Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn's a good receiver as well. I mean, they'll put up some big yardage numbers on offense, but they'll be able to score because they got some wide receivers. They probably go 4 or 5 deep with their wide receivers.
Yeah. The other part about that is the reason I asked him that question is I saw this number last week with the sacks that they gave up to compared to what their defense was getting. And I think it was a disparity of 56 sacks for 492 is what they gave up as a team, as opposed to their defense getting to the quarterback 27 times for 141 yards. And given how obviously key Shedeur Sanders is to that offense too, I mean, that's when you're bringing in essentially out of your 4 offensive linemen, 3 of them are new. One's going to be a true freshman. That's obviously got to be somewhat of a major concern there. And because I think this offense, I think everybody's going to always start with Colorado's offense and look at the weapons that they have and say, yeah, it's got that ability to be explosive every possession. But if Shedeur Sanders is taking a beating the way that he did last year, and that's not improved, and I think it was an important point brought up by Tyler there too, of, some of that is also on Shedeur Sanders. Well, hell, we watched the Nebraska game. There were times that either Nebraska got to him so quickly he didn't have a chance to really do anything, but there were other times where it seemed like he did have time and he was still, scanning, and finally pressure got to him. So that's a big part for me. But that's the other thing that I asked about the whole culture of this team. And again, I know we overuse that term a lot, but when you've got a roster that is fairly new, you've got the amount of attention that is always going to be on this program as long as Deion Sanders is the head coach, win or lose, that, they're not going 12-0. And so when you do lose that game, and I think that Nebraska one is an interesting one there, given how much hype there's going to be going into that game on both sides and how much national attention there's going to be going into that game. And if they were to lose that game, and especially if they lose that game, how does it look when they lose? What is the feel with that group? What is the overall? Because I mean, they had a nice little start to that whole thing last year at 3-0, feeling yourself pretty good there. North Dakota State will put up a fight, but if you go into Lincoln and you lose that game, you're 1-1. It's a lot different than what it was a year ago, where all of a sudden you're trying to see that adversity with a roster that is completely unfamiliar with each other in a program that people don't care whether you win or lose. They're going to ask you the tough questions, or at least going to come after you and nitpick every little thing, because that's the position you put yourself in as a program. How is that team going to respond?
Yeah. I think Nebraska will get to Shedeur. I don't know they'll sack him 8 times. But the other thing to keep in mind is he picked apart. I mean, Nebraska had some confusion on defense. Tommy Hill did not have a very good day. But Shedeur was 32 of 44, never threw a pick. I mean, he almost threw for 400 yards.
Yep.
The other thing about Nebraska got to him, but they got out of it. They were 9 of 18 on third down conversions. 9 of 18. Nebraska defensively couldn't get off the field. And then they gave Colorado a short field. Nebraska only one time was in the red zone in that game. One time.
Yep.
Colorado seemed like they lived in the red zone.
Especially at the end of the first half, too. And that 9 of 18 number, if you remember, gosh, defensively, that was so much further in Nebraska's favor until, again, where everything picked up offensively was in the second or the end of the first half. I think there was a time where they ran off, 8 or 9 conversions in a row. So that number that the 9 of 18, I mean, it was at one point, I think, 1 of 9.
Yeah, Nebraska's defensive front 7, and if you watch Saturday night, they look like what they're supposed to look like. Man, do they practice hard. Terrence Knighton's got himself a group, and I know you throw in the linebackers for the front 7. Those guys on the defensive line, they work hard. Nash Hutmacher could have killed a running back on Saturday night. He ran across the field. I don't think it was Irvin. God,
I think it was Dadell. I think it was Dante Dadell. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Nash ran clear across the field, could have killed a man.
Yeah.
But he decided not to.
Good.
They work hard. Boy, they have some intrigue there. That front 7 against Colorado is going to eat well.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they don't go to Pizza Ranch or Val's Buffet, or they go to what's the new buffet on 72nd? It's got like Apple Buffet or something.
Oh, is that new?
Yeah,
I know there is like an Apple.
Well, I've just
something.
seen it advertised now.
Okay.
They don't need to go to a buffet before the game because they're going to eat well against that offensive line. Nebraska's front 7 will determine that game.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't know that they'll have 8 sacks, but they are going to cause havoc. Nebraska. Whoa.
Ooh, Simone Biles is down.
Was that? I think that was just practice.
Hope so.
Ooh,
a little bit of a limp there too.
Nebraska's front 4 is in a really, really good spot this year and beyond. And then you add in the 7. I mean, I'm looking at guys. They got what they're going to do with James Williams. I can't wait to see because he's long. He's bigger than when we saw him briefly last year. He looked good on Saturday night, but I don't know that he's a guy that's on the field all the time. But in situational passing, he's going to be out there, and he's going to be a problem for whoever's trying to block him at tackle.
Yeah, and I love that he wanted to be not necessarily just that as Terrence Knighton is dubbed him the sack man, but wanted to be a little bit more of a guy that had an opportunity to play other than third downs. And I think his body and just, again, having now another year under Tony White and under Terrence Knighton, just working with that group, that there's going to be more versatility with him. Yeah, he stood out. The other guy, and I saw him, just clips of him at the when they did the road race. But Riley Van Poppel, Jesus.
Oh yeah,
he is
and that shows
a massive dude.
He's got 2 guys that could be NFL guys that are in front of him, and he's going to get to play, but not most places he'd get to play. Now he's going to be fine for next year.
Mm-hmm.
The other guy that I liked a lot last year, just seemed like he never flashed all the time. Bayor looks different.
Yep.
Bayor looked pretty good Saturday night. I mean, they're in a good spot with that front 7, but their front 4, Ty and Nash, are going to eat. They're going to eat really, really well.
Well,
and they've got the other thing I like is there's a lot of positions you saw, and anybody else that was there, they've recruited themselves and developed themselves in options at certain positions. There's still areas where they gotta get better, but they have more options if guys go down. Now where they don't is quarterback, one.
All right.
But other positions, they've got some nice depth that is developing behind the frontline guys that have played on that side of the ball, played on defense, and played a lot of football together so far.
Well, and to that note too, when we saw Turner Corcoran get most of the reps at left tackle at the ones, but seeing still Teddy Prohaska out there, that second group offensive line, as far as from a physical standpoint and looking the part, and that's been a big conversation during the offseason, is that gap between the ones and the twos when it comes to the offensive line. Like Tyler Knox got a little nasty in him too, but seeing like Sam Sledge and those guys, I was butchered this guy's name, Macheshek. Again,
they have some serviceable guys,
dudes that at least physically look the part too. And I know it's one thing to look, to shed the label of the all bust team, but just seeing that physical presence, how those guys look, and again, they were you got shoulder pads. That's it. You can tell the work that they put in, but you mentioned something that was, I think, pretty evident to anybody else watching, is just the entire practice, even when they're doing one-on-one drills, team drills, like the popping, even without being in full pads, they get after each other, which again was good to see.
All right, Evan Bland from the World Herald, his thoughts moving forward as Nebraska enters their first full week of fall camp. He'll join us next on 1620 The Zone. All right, on this 5th of August, this camp rolls on for another day in the heat. We react to Saturday night where Evan Bland and the rest of the Omaha World Herald crew was, and Evan joins us now. Good morning.
Morning, guys.
If you didn't know, and that was the first time you were watching Nebraska this year, and there was a guy in a green jersey wearing 15, what year would you think he's in college?
Junior, maybe senior. Yeah, he looked really good, did Dylan Raiola. And I thought, that was my number one takeaway from the practice, with all the caveats that I'm not a professional scout and it was one practice and all the rest. But to me, it was pretty obvious who the number one guy was. Not just some of the intangible stuff, leading the team out onto the field and just how he carried himself, but the throws that he made consistently, deep balls, short stuff. He looked the part, looked poised, and the rest of the room certainly has its qualities. I think we saw a little bit of explosiveness from Heinrich Harburg. Jalen Grahamstad had a couple of nice long throws. Kalen, to me, still is a promising freshman with a promising career ahead of him. But at this moment, Dylan Raiola absolutely looked like the guy. It didn't look necessarily all that close. And so sort of this off season of presuming that he's the starter seemed to me like it was cemented all the more, just even in a couple of hours, how he carried himself inside Memorial Stadium.
It was hard not to notice the new weapons as well on Saturday, mainly Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayor, and just seeing how those guys can be used, seeing how they stood out in just their route running. When you think of not necessarily even the guy getting them the football, but what those guys can do to the guy getting them the football, that was also pretty nice to see.
Yeah, I thought Banks especially had a nice connection with Raiola throughout the evening. They had a few scores, and Banks was one who had a little bit of a quieter spring game, so I think people maybe could sleep on him a little bit more. But the practice, I think in that regard, was pretty eye opening. Just they connect on a fade, they connect on a little post over the middle, and it just looked like they'd been playing together for a long time. And not that it was a true freshman and a transfer going into his last season. So I think you start there. Nayor, to your point, Nick, he looked the part. He looked like a guy who is a playmaker, who's going to have that straight line speed, that ability to take the top off of defense and kind of give them a different look. And that was kind of how they were billed coming in, right? Banks was the guy with more than 100 career catches who could kind of find that opening on the field within a defense. And then Nayor was kind of the guy, the big play threat. Mm-hmm. And so I think we saw a little bit of that. And then, you mix in some of the other guys. Malachi Coleman had a couple of nice plays. Ja'Cory Barney, to me, might still be the most explosive guy out there. We didn't see Jalen Lloyd because he was sitting out with just some minor, bangs and bruises and things. But it's, you talk about a position that's been transformed under Matt Rule just in the last year and a half in Nebraska. I think you got to start, if not quarterback, you got to start with wide receiver, just for not just the top end talent, but the depth, where you're talking 5, 6, 7 guys that can be playmakers for you at any given point. So they've added a ton of athleticism, a ton of speed there. And it's going to be really, I think, fascinating to see how they utilize that different combination of skill sets in the offense once the season gets going.
Let's throw another guy into the mix, because he was pretty noticeable on Saturday night, and he's a name that keeps coming up. He's changed positions, but he's a Matt Rule guy. Matt Rule loves what Bonner brings to the program. And he flashed on Saturday in the moments that he was out there. What do you think his role is, Evan, for this year?
Yeah, he's a really interesting one. He came in as a receiver, had that fullback position there for a while. Now he's sort of back as a pass catcher. I think he's an interesting one because you think about how Matt Rule says they want to have these sort of do everything players, these positionless players. And I think we always sort of gravitate to Carter Nelson when we think of that, guys who can line up in the backfield or split out wide or go in the slot. But I think Bonner is kind of that guy too, and a little bit more of an understated physical sort of way. Like Bonder's the guy who can line up in the backfield and be a lead blocker for, Emmett Johnson or somebody. And then he can, line up maybe in the slot and make a play. And we saw him do all of that. I mean, he's sure-handed. He's going to put his shoulder down and put one into a guy. Just a no-nonsense guy. And he's pretty quiet. He's not a social media presence. His recruiting story out of Georgia wasn't super prominent or high profile, but he just kind of came in and worked. And, if you recall too, he was one of those guys who came in under the old regime, and you kind of thought, well, maybe he'd move on after Mickey Joseph and company left Lincoln, but he stuck around. He's put in the work, and he's absolutely become, one of us in the Matt Rule sort of parlance for what they have at Nebraska there. So really, I think kind of an underrated piece, but somebody whose versatility is going to keep getting him into that offense, I think, pretty consistently this season.
Evan, what'd you make of Turner Corcoran rolling with the ones at left tackle? You see Prohaska in the mix, but a lot of Turner Corcoran with that. Was that surprising to you?
A little bit. Yeah, I think that's one of the more notable things out of practice. And there weren't a ton, right? Like defensively, you kind of knew what it was. It was a little fascinating maybe to see like Jeremiah Charles with the number 2 corners with Tommy Hill sitting out and Bly Hill hurt. But that was, I thought Corcoran was probably one of the more interesting little nuggets, him being with the ones. And it's a testament to what he's done. I think people kind of forget about him too, because he was hurt midway through last year, and he has kind of played a bunch of different spots and has been a little quieter in terms of his public persona and what he's done and for the media too. But for him to be at left tackle, I think that's a really good sign for what he's doing, because it's not like Teddy Prohaska is not doing what he needs to do. I mean, by all accounts, Teddy's been playing really well. He spoke last week during that 12-player press conference and was pretty happy with his offseason. So to me, it's more about just the depth that this offensive line has, where, hey, you got a guy like Prohaska who's been a multi-year starter on your second line, and you've got a guy like Henry Latufsky in that same spot who's going to be hurt here for a week or two, it sounds like, with a calf. But, Nebraska right now can go 7 or 8 guys deep on that offensive line. And what a luxury that is to have those guys waiting in the wings and be used as rotational pieces. And I thought the interior part of that line was really impressive too. I mean, with Justin Evans earning one of those guard spots right now, that was no given. Even a few months ago, I think there was sort of prognostications that Corcoran could have been a guard and you could have Teddy on the outside. So I thought it said a lot about what Evans has done. And then Mazuka too, coming back, and Matt Rule, who has been really blunt about Mazuka's struggles kind of adjusting to the Nebraska standard in the offseason, was really complimentary of him and what he's done here in the last couple of weeks too. So the interior looks really good. And if Turner's on the outside, I mean, that says a lot, I think, about what the strength of that offense could be and just the depth that line has as it tries to navigate the rigors of the Big Ten.
Hey, Evan Bland of the World Herald joining us. I was with a staffer on Saturday night. We were watching the running backs. And there was this guy that looks in fantastic shape that every time in a rep, he ran like he was angry. And this person told me, I wouldn't be surprised if his teammates vote him a single digit. And I looked at him and I said, wow, he hasn't played a lot of football, but he gives you promise. What's your read into what Gabe Irvin brings to the table in 2024?
Well, he's an interesting one too, because this would be the third sort of off-season fall camp in a row where there's been a ton of excitement around him coming into the season. He was a highly regarded prospect out of high school too, and it just hasn't been able to stay healthy. I think that's the great mystery with Gabe Irvin, is what can he do over a full season, because the previous staff and even Matt Rule's staff last year, I think there was a general belief that he was the most well-rounded of the backs, the guy who could catch a ball out of the backfield, who could run hard between the tackles, who had a good sense of pass protection and how that all fit. But, you look at practice on Saturday night, he was ostensibly the number 3 guy behind Emmett Johnson and what Ramir Johnson was doing. So, the first thing, of course, with Gabe is he fully healthy? And it sounds like he is. coming back now from 2 major injuries. So, I mean, it seems kind of obvious. Then yeah, I think his track record would say he has the ability to be a producer for Nebraska. And, I think part of the way you evaluate the running back room this year too is like, it has to be better just if for no other reason than defenses are going to have to worry about the pass and defending the pass in a way they haven't had to in a couple of years. And so I think Gabe Irvin could be a beneficiary of that. You listen to Emmett Johnson and his determination to hold on to that lead job that he got late last season and kind of ran with it. And Ramir Johnson's equally motivated too, as a guy who's been around forever and really feels like he's being put in the right position within the offense to succeed as well. But Irvin's probably the guy of all of those guys who was the most heralded coming in, maybe the bluest of the prospects in terms of blue chip coming in. Can he stay healthy? If he can, then yeah, I think this room suddenly becomes deep, and maybe this competition is one that doesn't end in camp but continues through the season. That's probably something Nebraska would be okay with.
Guys returning punts that excited you the most, including some of the coaches.
At the end, yeah, that was fun. That was, I love that stuff. And maybe people don't want to hear this, but it reminded me of Mike Riley's last season when they did stuff like that, and it was like Gerald Foster and those guys. But Bryce Benhart had a hand catch out there at the end. They pulled the big man out, and he didn't trap it against his chest, and that was 2 hands. That was some good work there. EJ Barthel did a good job too. But I don't know, man. There's some people that are probably going to be seeing some of those videos on social media going the other way. If you're Nash Shotmaker or Jamari Butler, I thought it was funny that they had Tyler Knack out there.
Yeah.
Matt Rule called him the instigator. He was the one who started that little skirmish early in practice. So getting him out there, I thought was a little bit of good humor and maybe a little bit of punishment, depending on how you look at it. But no, that was fun. I think the fans enjoyed that. And that was the other kind of part of the practice that was fascinating to me was, yeah, we're going to have a ton of takeaways, and we just talked about a bunch of them, but like, how do you make this an event that can grow this 1890 sponsored practice? And they did a few different things, but I thought the punt competition at the end was certainly up there. I know fans got a kick out of it, and players got a kick out of it. And so, a fun thing to do in fall camp is sort of mixes that competition with, a little bit more lighthearted moments too.
Yeah, I loved it. I think this continues, don't you? I think they can grow this in terms of from 3,500 to 4,000. Maybe they get 6, 7, maybe 10,000. I thought it was a great event.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. And, part of it, I think you're going to probably want to give people a little bit more heads up than what they had. Yeah. It was a couple weeks. It's late in the summer, early August, people have stuff going on. So maybe that's something they closed the ticket sales on Friday and then they opened them up again. I wonder if they would have the ability to have walk-up crowds and admit people that way. It seems to me like there would have been a couple thousand more if people could have just said on a Saturday night, yeah, let's go down and check it out. But then, people are going to listen to conversations like this and read coverage and think, next year, yeah, I kind of want to check that thing out. And so Matt Rule said as much beforehand. He's hoping maybe, you get to 10,000 in year 2 or 20,000 in year 3 or whatever it might be. I think Nebraska did a good job. You heard from different coaches during the game. They emceed it. They had music out there. So you had autographs afterwards with the black shirts. So I think they did a good job putting it on, catering it to the fans while also keeping it a practice. And it does seem like something that Nebraska, fans are going to be able to embrace here moving forward.
Now, Evan, I know you've had a chance to see certain sections of practice in your time covering them. And I told Gary one of the things that I, more than anything, was looking forward to seeing was how fluid everything is from, going to individual work, then going to one-on-ones and going to, 9-on-7, 7-on-7, stuff like that, and then team drills. But just to see if there's constant movement, constant energy, and even for a practice that they're going to get something out of, but they're also knowing they're going to have an audience. I saw a lot of that, but it was for not being in full pads. I thought it was physical. I'm just curious, based on what you've seen in the sections of practice you've had a chance to see, and now the full one, What was the overall takeaway just in the style of practice that you saw?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. It wasn't full pads like you mentioned, but they were hitting, not all the way to the ground, but they were hitting and they were moving. And really, there was just the 1 point, maybe 2/3 of the way through when Matt Rule on the live mic says, "Yeah, too much standing around.
Yeah,
we're gonna do some running." And so they did a couple gassers, but other than that, yeah, I mean, it did seem like there was always something going on, and like I think you're of that when there's a crowd and you're like, okay, you don't want to have a lot of these wolves where people are kind of looking around saying, what are we doing? And I don't think there really was any of that. Like you were at, there was a station and then they would rotate and the drills were interesting. A lot of eyes were on the quarterbacks, of course, but I thought some of the one-on-one stuff was good too. The turnover drills that they did were interesting and fun. And so, yeah, I mean, I think people just got to see a firsthand view of a Matt Rule practice, and it really did seem like they just kind of went through and they did what they did. I thought his Matt Rule's analogy before practice about this idea of like the greats do what they do regardless of who's watching or the setting or whatever. It just kind of felt like that's what they were doing. So certainly in the media, like the sessions that we get to see, usually that's like the stretch period and maybe a team compete session. So to see the full thing when they're moving through from station to station, I think you can appreciate all the more just the grind that's going into this, the attention to detail, and now obviously the big question is how it translates into the season. So I guess we'll see.
Evan, we appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good week.
Thanks, guys.
Evan Bland from World Health and Sam shared their thoughts on what they saw on Saturday night.
More than anything of this thing going forward, I walked away with it thinking this is what it is like to go to the NFL. This is what you get people thinking about it, and then you got to start somewhere. And so I think when Matt Rule was mentioned this before, hopefully next year they can get to 10, 20. I think, and you brought this up too, and you and Evan kind of in agreement of you give a little bit more notice too, given where this was probably the last weekend that a lot of people that have kids are going to be going to school, probably finishing up vacations and everything because everybody's reporting to classes either late this week or next week. So I love the idea, and you brought this up in the first hour, of just always having it that staple of, okay, when camp opens, it's going to be that first Saturday. It's going to be that first Saturday right before you really get going, because I think you're probably in the best part of. I don't think Saturday was a waste by any means, but you don't want to, as you mentioned, get into too much installs and a lot of detailed stuff because during the thing they didn't want phones or pictures to be taken during that part. And I just think that if that becomes the staple of it and people know every year that's when it's going to be, I think that this thing will only get bigger, because I think that it was interesting, but it was also, you felt like they were in a way sort of catering to you that showed up as well. So there was that nice mix of it of, all right, we are going to put on a little bit of a show for you guys for coming out and showing that appreciation.
Jacob Bigelow is going to join us in a bit. Simone Biles, on her final event, she is on the podium. She has taken silver in the floor.
So that injury that we saw, that
it was in practice.
Okay, good. Just making sure. Looked up and saw her limping around.
Well, don't look up NASDAQ. Hello. An interesting morning on Wall Street. Jacob Bigelow going to join us next. NASDAQ's dropped 1,000 points this morning.
Oh, that's not good. I was seeing Black Monday trending last night, that there was some anticipation of something going on.
Well, I'm seeing Good Monday and then Monday Motivation on my trending. I don't think they're talking about the same thing.
Last night I saw Black Monday, so I think there was some anticipation that it could be a little bit wild today.
All right. Yeah. All right. So how about back to those Olympics? We will do that. We'll talk some 3x3 with Mr. 3x3, Jacob Bigelow, coming up in the next hour on 1620 The Zone. All right, the Olympics continue today, week number 2. What would you guys say would be, if you were a pole vaulter, would be the most peculiar way to lose a pole vaulting Olympic competition?
Well, up until this weekend, I would have thought maybe the pole would snap. It always makes me very nervous. Those things look like they're just going to go. Psh. So that up until what happened this weekend, I would say that would be.
What happened this weekend, Nick?
Well, an Olympian, his, you just call him the lower abdominal region, his unmentionables, grazed up against the actual crossbar itself. It fell, and that's how he did not move on. That's how he lost, was because a part of his human anatomy was because of
His
making
baguette?
contact. Yes, his baguettes, yes, made
You
contact.
want to stick with the French theme?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, his baguette made contact with the crossbar, and, well, as you know, you can't make any contact whatsoever.
That'd be a hell of a pickup line. Did you know that I was disqualified from the Olympics because my junk is too big?
Or if you are able to kind of angle the conversation, so you're in the Olympics? Did you? I was hoping to medal. I did not. You know why? Or you don't even have to say, you know why. They say, what happened? Well, funny you should ask.
What a horrible way to be disqualified. Now, the gentleman's name is Anthony Ammirati. He is a French pole vaulter. The commentators clearly were having a hard time acknowledging what happened. If you watched it or if you've seen the replay,
they were probably blushing a little bit.
This is unfortunate. This is bad. I feel bad for the. I mean, should I feel bad for the guy, or should I be like, that's how you lost the competition?
I got a little excited for the competition. Adrenaline's going.
I mean, that's yeah.
Again,
well, he lost the vault, but he won the internet.
Yes, and I'd like to think that he will win in life. He will win at least in the social scene. I don't know if he's married, girlfriend, or whatever, but
broke the world record with the very wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
One of the top 10 stories of the Olympics, no doubt. Noah Lyles, you're still near the top.
Yeah.
The French pole vaulter, what a way to lose a competition. God, it sucks being a man. Jacob Bigelow will join us next on 1620 The Zone. Jacob Bigelow joins us now, contributing writer for Whiskers Illustrated, host of Stretch Big Pot, which has had guests on it recently, and now he joins us on the show. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. How we doing?
Good. Did you request that song?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Any particular reason why?
No.
Couldn't think of some Arlo Guthrie that you would like to be played on the radio station today?
No. I just full transparency. My parents went back to the Sphere this weekend, so I was kind of in a Grateful Dead zone over the weekend, just listening to some songs, and made a request, and it got granted. So thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that.
Okay.
And yes, that's where that came from.
They went back to the Sphere, like to renew the wedding
Did they go to
vows,
the-
or
yeah.
what were they going back to
Did
Vegas
they go
for?
to the Dead with you before?
They did. No, I mean we went in June, and then they just felt like going back for two more
awesome.
shows this past weekend.
That's awesome.
So good for them.
Yeah, they're
absolutely.
spending your inheritance.
Absolutely,
like
Good
Frank and
on 'em.
Estelle.
So
Okay. I was having a conversation with a friend over the weekend. You're a connoisseur of fine food. Is the walking taco a Midwest thing only?
it sure seems like it.
You mean a Frito pie?
I can't say I've been to many venues outside of the Midwest where walking tacos would be prominent, like a minor league baseball game or somewhere like that. But it definitely seems like it could be a Midwestern thing. Maybe it has state fair origins. We are, surrounded by plenty of good state fairs. So maybe it has state fair origins. I could be wrong, but it does definitely feel like a Midwest thing at its core.
I feel like this is a regional thing too, because you call it, and I think people in Iowa call it a walking taco. I feel like in the Omaha-ish, it's a Frito pie. Yes. Same thing though.
I don't know if I've heard anyone call it a Frito pie. I've only seen walking tacos. So, I mean, maybe that just says I don't get out a lot, or I'm not, I'm in the wrong circles when it comes to delicacies, like ground beef and Doritos or Fritos in a bag. But I don't, I can't say I've heard it referred to as such before.
Well, we'd have to get rid of you if you thought that Cheetos should be part of the walking taco.
Oh, no.
Hell no. Absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
I think probably if you do Cheetos, then you are not from the Midwest.
No. I don't. Yeah, I often have to be reminded about Cheetos as an option, in the chip aisle, and then I just think about all the Cheeto dust on my fingers and all that, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm good. I'm on the back half of my 20s. I don't need to eat Cheetos anymore. That's kind of where I'm at when it comes to Cheetos. So
Cheetos is the first thing I look for to see if it's on sale. Cheetos are expensive, but every now and then you'll see a full bag under $2. Yeah, you go get yourself some. And I'm 45, so I don't think there's any age on it, Jacob. So don't ever feel like you're too old for Cheetos unless you're trying to be very budget conscientious. That I understand. But if you find it on sale, have at it, man.
All right, let's have this as a discussion. Give me the chips that leave behind the best finger dust residue.
It's Cheetos.
We got to rank. We're ranking chip dust right now. I mean, there's
Flamin' Hot Cheetos is near the top.
Yeah.
Nacho Cheese Doritos.
Yep.
And then you know what? For the old schoolers out there, the Lay's Classic Potato Chips, they will leave some dust residue. That's pretty good on the finger.
Really? I would say more grease.
I think that I wouldn't say that's a dust residue. I think that's just grease and salt. I think that's just your cardiologist, worst nightmare. If you're getting that, but yeah, I mean the Doritos are definitely up there. I definitely had a big Dorito phase. Doritos and Mountain Dew, stereotypical video game kid snack choices. But I definitely think it's Cheetos. Doritos, and then a sneaky one. I know people have mixed thoughts on these. Are the
Funyuns?
What are the chili Fritos?
Oh yeah.
okay.
The chili cheese Fritos.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a good call.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know
Chili
what?
cheese
So,
Fritos.
but here's the thing. That it's not better than the chip itself. Like the residue is good, but the chip is pretty good. But I would put
I
chili cheese Fritos. I'd put in the top 5. I thought you were going to say Funyuns.
No, I
Funyuns
also
does
had
leave a little
Funyun.
You don't like the zesty onion dust on your fingers?
Yeah, that dust was definitely pretty prominent, but no, I don't think I was enjoying the Funyun dust back when I had a Funyun phase. Funyun dust also sounds like a drug strain that you have to ask for a special order of, but that's fine. That's just how my brain's working on a Monday morning.
I think the residue from the Funyun is flat out heroic.
Did you say heroic?
Yes.
I've never
I
put
might be here.
heroism to a Funyun before.
I might be here because there's a lot of people that are like, God, I don't even know the last time I ate a Funyun. I see it in the store all the time, but no one ever buys it.
Nope.
I'm telling you, your life will change if bi-weekly you have a Funyun.
Ooh. This was suggested. A Funyun is good on a cheeseburger from Rick. Never have tried that. Although I do like the occasional onion ring on a cheeseburger. It's very, very good. Yeah. So why would a Funyun be any different? Interesting. Might try that. Because I am one of those people, Gary, who has not had a Funyun or Funyuns in easily over 10, maybe 15 years.
Well, it's a new day.
It is.
Yeah.
Got a hankering for it.
All right. Do we have anything new on the Big Stretch Pod post Michael Lewis? I know you you have one that's about to drop.
Yeah, we got a pod coming out today. It's actually I pitched the upcoming pods as old friends. This is with a new friend. The pod will be out today, and I talked with Joe Jackson. He has a good YouTube channel called Feed the Post, and then he does a bunch of film breakdown stuff on his Twitter account. Talked with him last week, and that should be out later today. We talked about Nebraska's newcomers, their freshmen, and then some Big Ten, portal classes, freshmen to watch, players to watch, and that sort of thing. So that'll be out later today.
We were talking about the unfortunate incident with getting eliminated.
Where the heck is this going?
Well, I want to put Jacob into this conversation too. If you were to ever,
what do you know about Jacob?
Well, I don't, but this is a time to find out. If you were ever to get DQ'd in the pole vault, what would be the most likely reason you'd be DQ'd in the pole vault?
And
you can use what happened. That can be an option if you want to use that.
Well, Nick, to answer your question, I would be disqualified for using multiple poles.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I would be more likely to. I think like I would just flat out I would just flat out flop. I don't know. I don't know. I've never considered what my awkward body attempting to pole vault would look like. That thought has never really ran through my mind. But I guess my biggest fear would just be the pole snapping in half. That would be my.
See, that's what I said
fear.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be what I'd be worried about if I was making an attempt to pole vault. So yeah, I didn't spend much of any time near any tracks or track meets as a younger lad. So I have no experience in that department.
You're never intrigued about being a pole vaulter, huh?
No, never really got my attention.
It's a specialty. It's if you can even be average at it, you could probably have college paid for.
All right, Jacob Bigelow joining us, who is not supposed to be within 200 feet of a school or a Chuck E. Cheese.
Damn.
This is a transition. Do you think so? Because some of us know him, Dylan Travis was on the USA 3x3 team that didn't perform very well. Jimmer got injured. I think they need more than 4 guys on the team, maybe a 5th. But after the first kind of sampling of this in the Olympics where we took more of a vested interest. Do you think 3x3 can grow in the United States?
Yeah, I think it can. I think people still don't. I think the public doesn't still understand how people get added to the roster, because I know people, when they saw the crew getting over there for Team USA, they're like, where are the guys who didn't make the 5-on-5 teams? Put these NBA guys on there. And you have to kind of go out of your way and participate in 3x3 events throughout the calendar year to kind of accrue points, basically, to be on the the radar to get selected to Team USA. I know on the women's side, Haley Van Lith, she has gone out of her way to be active in 3x3. Even during downtime in the college season. Now, then on the men's side, obviously, just thinking where are these NBA guys? Well, they have a 82 game season and then the playoffs, and they're gonna take advantage of any and all downtime that they can. I definitely still think that there's an avenue for it to grow. But when and this is no slight toward anyone who participated in it, but getting more marketable names involved on the world stage would go a long way. But you're gonna have to figure out how to make that a possibility.
Okay, so when we were talking about the 3-on-3 craze that once existed, when you remember Hoop It Up, that typically when I would see it in Omaha, it would be very good high school basketball players that would formulate a team. I would also think in the college game that you would be able to formulate younger players that either are not necessarily going to be in the summer league or playing professionally, or if they are, maybe overseas, but they're taking a little bit of a break. But the one thing that I just in watching some of the 3x3, and when we talked to Dylan Travis about this too, was just because you are an exceptional, NBA star, the way that game is played is a little bit different, and it is especially so. If you were to look at that game and say, okay, this is the type of player that is going to really stand out or have a chance to be the most successful in the 3-on-3 game as opposed to the traditional 5-on-5. What would you say other than just, the ability to shoot? But I mean, isn't it the ability to take a guy off the dribble and be able to finish, just a lot of those more guard skill set than anything?
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, 3-on-3, it's a 12-second shot clock. It's half court. It's kind of, it can look like a mad dash at times, just, going back and forth and shots going up. The ball's different. I mean, there's all sorts of, different things that go into it. But yeah, I mean, a strong, guard skill set. I mean, it's physical too. I mean, it's not a lot of finesse going on in the 3-on-3 game, but the being able to get downhill, get to the rim, take somebody off the dribble. I mean, that's a pretty good place to start. It's definitely a guard first, kind of skill set, when you're thinking of first and foremost about what would make a good 3-on-3 player.
Do you think that we're not better because they don't play by our playground rules, where we don't have a clock, we play to 21, and also we check it up after every made bucket?
Check it.
Yeah, there isn't make it take it after 5, that sort of thing.
Yes,
to make it seem more like you're at home. Yeah, that's the lacking that familiarity. But yeah, I don't know for sure. It's definitely it's interesting. It's interesting because thinking about obviously Jimmer was part of this group, and he was injured. I know not in the Olympics, but in a 3-on-3 world event within the last couple of years. Robbie Hummel was still participating in 3-on-3. Some blasts from the past name. But I don't know what the recipe would be, but I think there's an avenue for it.
You know who was making a living playing 3x3? That's another reason we're not very good in the U.S. because we don't call it 3x3 here. It's 3-on-3. Stephon Bradford, former Nebraska basketball player, was making a living playing 3x3. I think he, 3 or 4 years ago, made a run at the Olympics.
Yeah, and then I know I don't know if it's still going on. I know there was a college 3-on-3 like showcase event, like on Final Four weekends for running for a couple years. They had teams by conference, like when the Final Four was in Minneapolis, that event was at Mall of America. I don't know if that's still going on anymore, but there's been some interesting 3-on-3 events, since it really came to the forefront within the last few years.
We would have dominated 2-on-2 though with Sidney Dean and Billy Hoyle from White Man Can't Jump, but unfortunately that is not an Olympic sport. I'm just saying 2-on-2 needed to be a thing. Maybe you could do a 2-on-2. We'll go at 3x3. They'll have 2x2. Oh yeah,
2x2. It's just NBA Jam. Just dream NBA Jam. Duos.
Yes. We remember that as well. NBA Jam was so popular. Again, I think we would dominate that. I mean, I think we have the market cornered on that. What was the name of the guy that goes out to the car and gets his gun?
Marcus Johnson in real life.
Was it Raymond? Was his name Raymond? I think it was Raymond.
I'm talking to guys who've probably never seen it. We'll get chatter on this. If Jack
I've seen that movie. Come on.
The original or the Jack Harlow?
You couldn't pay me to watch the Jack Harlow version. I wouldn't waste my time,
That's the
let
correct
alone
answer.
even consider it. But yes, I've seen the original. It's been a while, but I have seen it.
Okay. Good. All right. We'll get chatter on this. If Jack McVay could have played defense at Nebraska, his college career would have done what?
It would have been a little different. I think he definitely would not have been most known for being in those bench mob videos his last year at Nebraska, and that's no slight to Jack. We worked together for 3 years, and I've been chatting with him a little bit over these past couple months. But it's just a credit to him. He's changed. Well, he hasn't. His game looks the same. A lot of no hesitation threes, but his release is quicker. He looks a little more athletic, but he's still the same dude, and it's always good to talk to him. But yeah, it could have looked a little different, but now he's gonna have he got his first NBA contract at the age of 28, which is just a testament to the work he's put in. So
yeah, he's a good dude. Big game against Serbia tomorrow, so we'll all be watching Jack McVay.
Definitely.
All right. Have a good weekend. Look forward to, or have a good week. Look forward to your chat. That he's done a lot of work in breaking down a lot of the newcomers in the Big Ten. So I'm looking forward to that on the Big Stretch Pod.
Yeah, definitely. And the upset for me with Joe, he is fresh out of college. I thought he was maybe like my age or older than me, but he was like, no, I'm fresh out of college. I have a math degree from Purdue. I'm like, oh, you're another super smart guy that went to Purdue. That makes sense. But yeah, no, check that out, and appreciate the time like always, guys.
Hey, thanks, Jacob. That's the Stretch Big Pod. You can follow Jacob on Twitter at Jacob A. Bigelow.
I completely forgot about the bench mob. That was fun. They would be rowing the boat and everything at the end of the bench. It became kind of a neat thing. They do bobsledding. Remember that? That was fun. And yeah, Jack McVay was a part of that.
Yeah, remember when Nebraska went to the NCAA tournament last year? That was fun.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I do remember that. Let's do that again. Let's not worry about antics on the end of the bench.
I can't affect it. Okay.
Well, talk to a guy. You know a guy. Tell him to do good again. That guy lives over at Firethorn.
Wow. Why don't you just give out his address?
We've talked about this on the air. People know. He
hasn't played as much golf this summer.
He's dialed in. He's locked in, man.
Doing recruiting?
Yeah. He's locked in. Big year.
Played a lot of golf last year. They went to the NCAA tournament.
Oh, okay.
Not a lot of golf this year.
Oh.
They might finish 9th or 10th of the Big Ten. Have a better team, better record, but not make the NCAA tournament?
Whoa. Don't say that now.
Yeah.
Just be amongst the 15 that make it to the conference tournament, right?
Jack's sophomore year, he could shoot it. He just couldn't play defense. And that just didn't happen. But he is in a good spot. I look forward to you could have McVay against Joker tomorrow in the Olympics. Something we all thought would eventually happen when he was here back in what was his first year? 2015? Yeah, when he was a freshman here in 2015. I thought someday him and this guy named Joker are going to be going at each other in the Olympics for Australia against Serbia.
Yeah, well, we were talking about Joker last year of when his parade. Then we're thinking, man, I cannot wait to see Joker when he takes on Jack McVay of all people, because that is going to be a marquee matchup.
All right, quick break. We'll come back. Last 30 minutes on a Monday on 1620 The Zone. Hey, good news for White Sox fans who tonight will try and avoid their 21st straight loss. Do you realize if they win their next 48 games, they'll finish 75 and 87? So the 62 Mets would be out of play. But it's going to take a win streak here. Let's go on a heater.
Slightly. So I remember in 2002, the Oakland A's winning streak, and then that was surpassed by the 17 Cleveland Indians. More exciting for the losing streak now that we're getting close to the record of the Phillies losing streak from back in, what was that, 1960 something? That there would be a lot more pomp and circumstance for we remember when the Detroit Lions went winless and you get to that final game. That was really, really exciting. In fact, a lot of people were dialed into that. So if the White Sox can accomplish that, I feel like that is going to be must-watch television, and the fanfare should be justified. I think there should be, if you're anything worth doing, it's worth doing right. If you're going to suck, really suck.
Will the Storm Chasers have more people in Warner Park tonight than they will for the Oakland-Chicago game in Oakland?
Yes.
Now, I should give you a little caveat. The Storm Chasers are not playing tonight.
No. Oh, yeah, it's Monday.
Yeah, they open up a
Right.
2-week homestand beginning tomorrow with the Iowa Cubs, who just called up 3 prospects to Iowa. Chicago did.
Does it count if we include grounds crew and people that will just be doing their normal Warner Park work? If that counts, then I think they will be very close.
Again, I brought this up. Will the White Sox, would you guys like some juice on this? White Sox win their 30th game first or lose their 100th game first?
I mean, they've at some point they've got to. Jesus, 27 wins, 30th, or I'm going to say they get to the 30th win.
Okay.
Yeah.
The news out of Ann Arbor today about what could be coming down the pike from the NCAA. Desmond Howard, old tweets have been recycled. This is from 2011. Desmond Howard tweeted out, "So if Tressel gets a head coaching job in the NFL next season, does Roger Goodell suspend him for the first 5 games? Just asking." Seems kind of relevant, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did not take, it only took about 3.5 hours on the program today for somebody to go, who was number 97 Saturday night?
97 Saturday night. Wasn't that James Williams? 97.
Played the same side of the ball.
Who was 97?
Keona Davis. Who was a freshman from Arizona who physically looks the part. There's a lot. Corey Campbell has had a really good offseason. And that was something I enjoyed on Saturday night. Corey Campbell was very active.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not just, I turn these guys over to Matt Rule and his staff. And
he's a coach.
He is heavily involved.
Mm-hmm.
Keona Davis is a true freshman from Arizona, Tucson, Arizona.
Okay.
He's a strong kid. He's at a position, though, where you've got a strong 2 deep in front of him, and he'll get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I bet he's, I don't know, probably 250, 255. Like, for example, there are some guys that, at 255, he looks like his body can get bigger. James Williams is up to 250 and still looks like he could get bigger.
He was impressive. Oh, yeah, that's right. He's 90, by the way. He was impressive looking from a physical standpoint. I mentioned this to you earlier before we came on the air. Gabe Irvin, I thought definitely, as far as if we're just talking body types and the different body transformations, I don't know what he's currently listed at right now, but he looked a lot more sleek. He looked a lot more lean.
He's cut. He always wins the award for August and September.
That's true.
He does run angry. He's motivated. Like, I was told Turner Corcoran it's go time. I mean, this is it for him. And he knows a lot of people have just crapped all over him, but some of it rightfully so. I'm not going to say, oh, whoa, got to be better. You're one of the highest ranked recruits that Nebraska football has ever had. How many times have you been on the All Big Ten? I know there's injuries involved. Okay. But I will give him this. There are a couple of guys, like, I'm hard on Malachi Coleman because Nebraska needs Malachi Coleman to perform. Malachi Coleman, I noticed you on Saturday night. Okay? I noticed you. Gabe Irvin, I noticed you. Gabe Irvin runs angry. But Gabe Irvin looks great in August and September. Yeah. But Turner Corcoran is very much motivated and has had a good summer and has had a good week. Now, he didn't get the Mazuka mention like Rule gave to the Florida transfer, but he is highly motivated to prove people wrong. Good. I hope it works out because if that works out, then Nebraska is a better football program.
Right.
But man, that floor and that ceiling could hinge on what happens at that position.
Well, and that's the more than anything with the offensive line and Turner Corcoran, it's in a way very similar to how I feel about Gabe Irvin. Now, obviously, Turner Corcoran has had more reps when it comes to his career than Gabe Irvin because Gabe Irvin's had more prolonged injuries. But I'm all about how a guy looks, what you're hearing, and there's just certain people that's great. I'm not gonna rain all over that. But I kind of what you alluded to there, I think as anybody who watches or follows Nebraska or is a fan of Nebraska, I think you reserve that right for certain players to just say, cool, I appreciate you answering the question, giving your honest assessment of what you think of this guy. And I'm talking about, when the coaches or even some of their peers, their teammates are asked about him, giving their assessment of that player. Like, man, I'm always interested when a player is asked the question of, hey, give me somebody that is really standing out right now. And then they bring somebody up. I'm always intrigued when I hear that. But if, let's say, Bryce Benhart says, yeah, hey, you guys, wait till you see what Turner Corcoran's looking like right now. That's cool. It's not nothing. But there are certain players that have been here long enough or you've heard enough about around them that you're thinking, and you don't see it on the field, that you reserve that right to say, that's great, but I will not fully believe that. And even to Turner Corcoran, give me 3 or 4 games where he's standing out and he's doing what you hoped he would be doing. And that's where I came around on Bryce Benhart last year, where Bryce Benhart, you quit talking about him because he wasn't a problem on the offensive line. When we quit talking about Turner Corcoran, if he's getting the starts and he's playing that position and we're not talking about him, guess what? That's what you want him to be. You don't want to be talking about him.
Hey, subtly, Matt Rule crushed USC in Florida. Actually, Tony White and Matt Rule crushed USC and Florida, respectively, this week.
How so?
One guy that just transferred from USC had to understand the standards are different at Nebraska before he could get on the field.
Oh, okay. You're talking about between Mazuka and Sayer.
Mazuka had to understand the standards at Nebraska that things are done differently here.
Mm-hmm.
That trip to Los Angeles in mid-November going to be kind of interesting for Tony White.
Yeah.
Tony White reveals in an interview that he was offered the defensive coordinator job at USC, but never talked to Lincoln Riley. So who was that Tony White talked to? And then of a guy that just transferred from USC, he said he's got to understand the standards at Nebraska before he can get on the field.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a very interesting trip. But Billy Napier and Lincoln Riley did not have a good week from the mouths of the head coach and the defensive coordinator. All right, we'll take a quick break when we come back. Jack McVay, who played basketball at Nebraska, he was here for 3 years, played nearly 80 games. He couldn't play a lick of defense, but boy, he could shoot it when he get on a heater.
And a great guy.
So he was on a roster that had a guy that played in the NBA in Roby, who now will be playing overseas. But Jack McVay in the Olympics, that might not be the most impressive story of one of his former teammates. He may not, like being in the Olympics, may pale in comparison to what a former Nebraska basketball player is doing right now that was a teammate of Jack McVay.
Who we got? What are we going with here?
Well, we'll do that. That's called a tease.
All right, I look forward to
when
this.
When we come back, I'll tell you. Because you're going to be amazed. Mornings with Sharp and Handley on 1620 The Zone. Hey, one event to watch today. It's over on Peacock. It's at 11. USA Canada beach volleyball. Taryn Cloth from Creighton will be back in action. They had a great run. Now they are into the race for a medal. All right, before I tell you about a unique thing surrounding Nebraska basketball, here is our friend from Beloit, Kansas. Goes by the name of Prime. Good morning.
What's going on, my Nebraska fans? How are we doing today?
Good. How you doing?
Well, I'm busy and hoping for some rain this weekend. It's been a brutal summer here. We haven't had rain for probably 6 weeks, and the old golf course is just hanging on. Just want to have continued prayers for Greg Sharp, and my brother Mark Johnson had a little horse accident the other day, and he's just got home after separating his pelvis and breaking a rib, and he's got a long road to recovery, but he thinks with my help and the rest, he's going to be at the North Dakota State-Colorado game in 3 weeks, and then I'll help him get to Nebraska and be a spotter. But, he rode 100 miles on a damn horse with 150 other cowboys out in southwest Colorado. They comes home, and 2 days later goes to rope a damn steer in South Denver, and the damn horse went ballistic, and he hit his groin on the saddle horn and separated his pelvis and broke a rib, and they had to do surgery. Got about an 18-inch rod in the back part of his pelvis and plates and about 16 screws in the front. So he got to go home last night, and we'll see what happens.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Godspeed on that one. Yeah. But, holy cow. That's a lot.
Anyway, things are awfully quiet in Boulder. I was actually up to practice last Monday to see him, and then he does this crazy thing. But there's some big dudes and some older dudes up there. Of course, I suppose all of you read the Athlon article about the gambling, firearms, and drugs, but you never know until you're on the inside. But I'm telling you what, the offensive line looks better, defensive line looks better, and of course, Shadur is one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. It's going to be an interesting year.
Yes, it will. I didn't know you were the spotter. I can't wait to meet in person in about a month.
I'm looking forward to it, guys. Looking forward to it. Like I said, we're not sure. Old stubborn, tough cowboy Mark says he's going to be there, and I think he will be there with some help, either wheelchair or walker. But he's going to call the game and plan on it. But I do the spotting on the road for him, and look forward to coming up. So.
Hey, good deal. Thanks, Brian, for the call.
All right. Good luck to all those students going back to Lincoln, Boulder, KU, and K-State, wherever they're going. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Didn't mention Independence Community College. Come on.
Always gives us a lot of information about the play-by-play voice of Colorado. Some that probably should not be on the air, but we wish Mark all the best.
That sounds rough.
What part?
Every bit of it. I just think having any type of accident involving a horse is never going to lead to anything good. That's just not speaking from experience, but just a general assessment. I feel like I'd be very, very accurate in saying that. So, all right. So tell me about
hold on here.
Tell me about Johnny Trueblood.
I got to read this. Johnny Trueblood.
I mean, he was technically
former.
He was a McVay teammate,
former Summit League assistant. Yeah. One quick email here. This is from Stan. Stan got at us the other day about this discussion about golf.
Yes.
Golfer of the year, and if you include a gold medal, which at the time when this discussion was going on, Xander was playing pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And then Scotty Scheffler shot a 62 yesterday and won gold. He said, okay, Scotty's gold gives him greatest of the year title. Xander 1A. Looking forward to watching Gooch this weekend.
Yeah, that is this week.
Yep.
Both. You got two of the Gooches, too, that'll be playing it.
Alan says separated pelvis wasn't in my bingo card of off-season injury reports.
I didn't even know that was a thing, but that sounds horrific. Doesn't sound like you'd be doing anything anytime soon.
Hey, some things you'll do to be the voice of the Buffaloes.
You'll separate a pelvis.
Yeah. Okay. So Jack McVay plays tomorrow in the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
Knockout round. Jack McVay played here about 10 years ago for Nebraska, out of Australia. Could shoot it, couldn't play defense, had a really good sophomore year, not so good junior, and then got paid a lot of money to go play pro ball in Australia. And he's a really interesting follow on Twitter. Like, he's very active on Twitter, giving out advice and things like that. And he's been kind of fun to watch because he does not turn down a shot. He may be contested by, 4 arms, but he likes to get it up. So when McVay was playing here, he was playing over in Pinnacle Bank Arena. There was a guy that was catching passes at the same time at the University of Nebraska named Stanley Morgan Jr.
Yes.
Well, Jack McVay, in his time at Nebraska, had a teammate who is now a teammate of Stanley Morgan Jr. with the New Orleans Saints. Do you know who I'm speaking of?
I do not.
He did not finish his career at Nebraska, but his dad was, in the mid-'80s, was a really good basketball player at UNO. He finished his college career at Iowa State. And now he is in training camp with the New Orleans Saints. Stanley Morgan Jr. and Michael Jacobson
played football
are catching passes in training camp right now for the New Orleans Saints.
Wow. Did not have that one. I did not see that either, too. But I forgot that when he left, too, there was a little bit of football with him, with Michael Jacobson. Holy cow. Okay. I had no idea he was in training camp. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What's the odds that he makes it?
I don't think so. I don't think much. I think we're more focused on Stanley Morgan Jr. catching on with his hometown team.
Yes, that's true. Now you can have the basketball conversation of a guy that could actually play wide receiver that also played some basketball too. And we were just honoring one of those men this weekend, Julius Peppers, one of the great basketball and football players.
Who, by the way, never won Defensive Player of the Year.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolute for a guy who is dominant, especially in some of his years at Carolina. But he had a couple good years with Chicago. For him to never win that's pretty crazy.
I cried this weekend as part of the Hall of Fame. I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm at that age where I'll let my emotions roll. The way they honored Steve McMichael, I cried. If anybody out there has a family member that has been diagnosed with ALS, it is an awful disease. And my heart goes out to all of the caregivers, because you first are told you have very, very short amount of time to live.
Right.
It is not an easy way to live. And I've not had anybody in my family, John Driscoll Hopkins, who is the original member of the Zac Brown Band, is a friend of mine. And he announced a couple of years ago he was diagnosed with ALS. And he, Hop has slowed down a little bit. But, he when you're hit with that. So I've experienced it from hearing his family. In minor league baseball, in my previous life, I got involved with the Lou Gehrig group. And they are, throughout baseball, bringing attention to ALS and raising money.
Yeah.
And you meet these caregivers, and I don't know how they do it with the strength and the patience. And I look at Steve McMichael's wife,
Misty, yeah,
and what she has done for her husband and for the cause is incredible.
Yeah.
And there are unfortunately thousands and thousands and thousands of caregivers that are like her. And her husband was told that he would not be living after 2 years. He is still living. And what they did for him on Saturday, when he went into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and my emotions were not good with this because I'd already seen the ESPN feature on Friday. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm crying. And the way they honored him was unbelievable, because they didn't have a ceremony in Canton, and that was the ceremony. They went to his home in the Chicago area, and with his teammates from the 85 Bears, which include some guys that have gold jackets, they had the gold jacket and they had the bust right there. Walter Payton's son was in Canton telling the story of Steve McMichael. And then when they unveiled it, all of these people were surrounding Steve McMichael. And I know this with my experience in ALS, is your body isn't there. But you know what is there is your mind. And I know damn well that he is laying there and he understands what's going on.
Yeah.
And when they presented to him in person, he had the gold jacket on, he had the bust of him that he could see it.
Yeah.
That was an incredible, incredible moment. Good on the Pro Football Hall of Fame for doing that. And thankfully, Steve McMichael lived long enough to see that because his mind knows, his body just doesn't.
Yeah. And that's the part that I'd known for since it became official that he was getting in this year. Everybody that has been close to him, they've spoken in a variety of occasions about they would be shocked if something had happened to Mongo that he doesn't see this one through because he was determined for that. And when they have that live shot in Homer Glen, and he's already got the jacket on, the bust is facing him. You got Mike Singletary there, you got Richard Dent there, Tom Thayer, and some of his great teammates just all by his bedside. It's in a way it foreshadows of what's not only the greatest accomplishment for Steve McMichael, but also whenever that inevitable last breath for him is, you're going to have a similar scene where all those guys are going to be right there by his side. And
he's in football heaven.
He is.
That's pretty damn cool. That might be the coolest thing of the weekend. And it was a really good weekend.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Coming up next, the crossover. Is Jack Mitchell really here?
Is he here or is he on?
No, I think he's in person.
Is he in person?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. That will be an interesting crossover. We're going to talk KLIN, the history of KLIN, Broadcast House. All right. We'll do this.